And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
And should roll call.
That's right. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern Time. Of course, 5:05 Pacific, coast to coast. It's bright and early. Still dark outside, brother. Coffee and donuts. Grab them as you can. NYPD Nepotism 2025. To me, you know what? It's come full circle. I believe it was 2023. I want to say it was the end of 2023 where we did our first episode on nepotism that started the attacks from the Khaki Pants Unit, which was directed by John Schell, Kaz Daughtry. That really started the chain of events. So I think we come full circle at this point. I want to say it was probably November or December 2023. I remember at the time when we filmed that episode, I was out in Malaysia at the time. So here we are, full circle, brother. Nepotism 2025. You know what? Before we get into it, let's just preface what nepotism is, right? The bottom line, it's preferential treatment for jobs, right, by people in place of power. People that have the ability to have power, influence, to put people in positions, family, friends, people that can cause a benefit, preferential treatment. These are all elements of nepotism. John, immediate thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got asked a while ago to do an episode on Kaz Daughtry. I think we were pretty fair. I think we were kind of light when we did that episode. I don't even think we actually nailed everything that was happening under the form of nepotism. And now we got a new police commissioner, right? And I think since the point when we did that episode, we've had we've had Keechon Sewell was the police commissioner when we did that episode. Then it was Ed Caban. Then it was whatever that loser's name is. Now it's Jessica Tisch, right? So we've been through 4 police commissioners. We're at our 4th police commissioner. I think after we did that episode, nepotism in every form has increased in the NYPD. When you look at promotions, when you look at transfers, when you look at assignments, when you look at overtime, literally none of it is going towards its purpose, which is public safety. None of it is going towards rewarding competence and rewarding hard work. None of it. And we have a new police commissioner now. She says that she's going to stop it. The promotions are going to be merit-based. And yet, every promotion, we see just yet again more nepotism. And you see clear as day, sitting on the stage with her, I just see nepotism. The only like, let's see, who should be sitting on that stage? All right, Joe Kenny. Okay, that's it. She shouldn't even be at the podium. Clearing up nepotism. Like, look at that stage.
So you know what's interesting about this, John? Even before our episode about nepotism, where Kaz Daughtry was at the center of it, before that episode, pretty much at the infancy of this podcast, we did an episode, if you remember, and we spoke about the promotion and the track of former Commissioner Dermot Shea's, I think it was his son, right? I think it was Richard Shea. And with 18 months on the job, he was put on a unit for track to get detective. 18 months on the job. It was, wow, what a shock. 6 months in a police academy. So an actual year in the street that he was so amazing, such merit that they had to put him in a unit where he would get his shield after another 18 months. We were shocked by it. And after that episode, what's interesting, right? We did the episode about nepotism on Kaz Daughtry by request. Of course, we keep our sources anonymous. By numerous sources from the NYPD that actually asked us to do an episode about that. And that's what commenced the attacks on the podcast. was that episode in particular. What's interesting about that, John, is what you just said. I want to reflect on that. I thought it was a fair assessment also. Were we critical of Kaz Daughtry? Yes, but I thought that we were pretty professional about it. And we showed him respect and even provided tips and advice and said we wish him well. And what we did with that episode is that I think we actually helped him also in a sense that we said his promotion was based on nepotism and not DEI. And we said there's a possibility he could be promoted at some point, or at least if he is promoted, what we said was at this point to be humble, take a seat back and learn before you put yourself out there and try to project yourself as someone that you're not. So I thought it was a very fair assessment, John. So what do you think? Do you remember when we spoke about Dermot Shea's son even before that episode?
Yeah, I remember. I put out a post about Dermot Shea's son being sent to the squad with 2 years on, right? And I was bombarded with, oh, he's good. He has 20 arrests. And I'm like, okay, so he went to the squad because he made 20 arrests. He has literally a year and a half of street time. Literally. He could be the best cop in the world, but even if that, he doesn't deserve to be in the squad. I don't care. He has way too little time, And I think ton of all the Bronx guys. That's when you really knew that nepotism was real, because all the Bronx guys were telling me that the mandate was not even real. None of them even had to fill out religious exemptions or anything. So the mandate wasn't actually for health and public safety. It was to reduce a budget. Let's be real. It was to reduce a budget and meet DEI goals in the NYPD. I don't know what it was in the other agencies, but in the NYPD, it was to reduce the budget of the NYPD. It was to meet DEI goals. That's what it was. Because the guys in the Bronx, while Shea was the police commissioner who believed in the mandate, who also 1,000% supported defunding the police, they never had to deal with it. And they admitted that to me. I have all of that stuff on my Instagram, where they admitted it, that they never had to do anything. Guys in the 4-6 squad or whatever precinct he considers home and whatever these losers did. So, but we called out the son with 2 years on going to the squad because it's an absolute joke. It's wrong. It's an embarrassment to the job. It overall affects morale negatively because people don't feel that there is a pathway for success. And that is the guys that don't go the boss route, which is the majority of people in the NYPD. The majority of the people in the NYPD do not attain rank in this job. They don't become sergeants. They don't become lieutenants. They don't become captains. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what the detective rank's for. That's what that path is for. And that's supposed to be through hard work and competence. You're supposed to get promoted or even transferred into an investigative assignment. So I think that was the first time it's been called out publicly in NYPD history, and people just didn't know how to react over it. It was, oh, Dermot Shea is a great guy. Whatever. Like I said, I learned a lot from Dermot Shea. I think that when you look at him historically and you look at him prior to his becoming the police commissioner, because I do believe he was the weakest police commissioner we've ever seen, and he made way for all this stuff. I think he was one of the smartest people in policing. I think he has a good brain for policing. I think he loves the NYPD. I just don't think he had the courage and the backbone to be the police commissioner.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. I think that it's apples and oranges when we talk about being in a position, a uniform personnel, and supposedly Shea was cop's cop, and then actually transitioned to commissioner. I think it's a complete different animal to different wheelhouse. I think that was Shea's biggest mistake. If he never became commissioner, we would all have a different story and speak differently about Dermot Shea, right? When he was doing crime control strategies, when he was doing the key teaching courses for NYPD personnel that were taking supervisors test. Shea was pretty well known. He was considered a cop's cop. When he's the commanding officer of the 4-4 precinct, he was well revered. But I think that becoming police commissioner, I wouldn't say it changed him. People say, it changed him. I'd say that it really exemplified his weaknesses, right? When he was in these positions, it exploited his strengths. his ability to be a cop's cop, to be a leader in those positions. But transitioning to politics, and that's what it is when you're the police commissioner, he showed that his weaknesses, as far as being self-serving and pandering to the public, that's where he showed his weaknesses. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and his weaknesses were cowardice, not standing up because he didn't know how to lead in that position. So I think it's apples and oranges. You can be as intelligent as he was and fail, because his position as police commissioner was an epic fail. He disbanded anti-crime, and that is one of the deaths of policing. June 15, 2020, the end of anti-crime is a huge mistake. I think anti-crime is a major component to intrusive policing, if not the best asset that we had in the NYPD, which is veteran cops doing intrusive police work, which is under the umbrella of broken windows. Now, when we talk about nepotism, I look at that dais, John, and I see an entire dais of nepotism. And it goes back to everything I've been saying on this podcast for 2.5 years now. The reason why no chief will speak out and talk about the atrocities, the appearance of impropriety, and say that the job, when I say the job, again, back to what I've been saying in this podcast, friends and listeners know, I say the job is people. These people right here on that dais, that is the job. They hold the cards to the job. The reason why they do not speak out is because they paved the way for their offspring. I've been saying that for 2.5 years. And it's exactly that. They paved the way for their offspring. And included with the offspring is wives, husbands, but most of it is offspring. They're kids. And that's why they don't speak out, because they have something to gain. Dermot Shea's son. And now we see Harrison's family members. Family members are on the end of benefit, and that's why they do not speak out. I don't care if you have 18 months on the job and you had 500 collars. To me, it's just way too early on the job to transition to detective. It's a slap in the face to anti-crime cops that grinded, getting gun after gun, wearing plainclothes in some of the roughest areas of New York City, and fighting tooth and nail just to get an interview with the detective squad. This is a slap in the face and just a complete insult, and deteriorates the entire department, rips it apart. I thought that it was so egregious with Dermot Shea's son getting into a squad with 18 months. And you know what? Under Jessica Tisch, we didn't get any better. If anything, we doubled down. So you know what? To me, she's starting to appear to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. She speaks eloquently. She gives a great bedtime story. She looks the part. But you know what? Behind that, there's someone that's pretty self-serving too. She's serving her own needs to move up in politics and potentially have her own political career. And she can look behind her right now, or she can look right and look left, and the entire dais is nepotism. And now she's only attributed to it. She's a part of it. She is now part of the problem.
Yeah, so before we get on that dais, I just want to read out some super chats. So Eddie West says, submitted my 28 to the Deaf Finest desk, locker room security today, John. No, you're going down to transit, Eddie. Late again, my friend. Coffee and cigars. So lieutenants will all be revealed about everything. I hear you guys say it, and I'm on the edge of my seat. So what do you know that we don't know? Well, the only thing we don't know much that you don't know, but I did put out a post that there were 2 more items pushed into Eric Adams' indictment yesterday for his SDNY indictment. We're also hearing that he's going to have some indictment coming down, local charges. Rumor is from Bragg's office. Let's see what happens. I don't know. And then the other one is Sleepy Joe, 275. He says, look at the melon on Kaz. So 100%. But most famous people have big heads, though. So you got to. So Kaz he's a celebrity in his own right. So, you know, he does definitely have a big head, though, in both ways, right? And he's got a big head, and his head's huge, and he also can't fit through the door with his ego. So, but let's look at the dais. Let's start all the way with Rebecca Weiner, right? Analyst. She was so great at being an analyst that she went all the way up to deputy commissioner. We seen definitely under the de Blasio administration for the first time ever, civilians being skyrocketed. Just complete. I worked with a girl. She got promoted, like, I'm not even kidding, like 3 times in a year. Until like big jobs. It was like director, executive director. I don't even know what the hell she is now. I think she's probably like an assistant commissioner or a commissioner. And so Rebecca Weiner skyrocketed nepotism. Kaz Daughtry, driver, skyrocketed to first grade as a driver, skyrocketed all the way to deputy commissioner. I think Kaz Daughtry is the epitome of not merit-based. He is the epitome of nepotism. So then you have Ryan Marola. How you doing, Ryan? So Ryan Marola, another kid, analyst, worked for Jessica Tisch in ITB, then becomes like her chief of staff for sanitation because she likes him. Listen, am I saying that he's not competent? Am I saying that he's not a hard worker? No, I'm not saying any of those things. But what I am saying is he has no business being the chief of staff in the NYPD. Nepotism. Tanya Kinsella, no business being the first deputy commissioner. Not only did she get skyrocketed, she proved that she is too incompetent and unqualified to do her job because a huge corruption scandal happened under her watch. Nepotism. Jessica Tisch, billionaire heiress, zero police experience. Nepotism. John Schell, John Benoit, chief of personnel. He deserves to be there. 30-something years on the job. No issue with that, right? All the way in the back. But he's in the second. He's in the second round. He's not in the first round. And then he is the first guy, John Schell. Again, nepotism. It was all about him riding Jeffrey Madrick's coattails. His career has been awful. His reign of chief of patrol was terrible. Any other chief of patrol would have been asked to step down in his first 6 months. There was about 7 to 10 things he did in his first 6 months that any other chief of patrol would have been asked to step down. He held that title for about 2 years. Now he's the chief of department, promoted. Nepotism. Joe Kenny, not going to say anything about him, not nepotism. Phil Rivera, we know he criminally associates, but other than that, like when you just see the major players, the voices of this department, the people that are out there on social media, it's the epitome of not merit-based. Look at the dais. It's not merit-based. That's it.
I got to push back on this one. Ron Lacey, good morning. I always appreciate your comments. He says, in fairness to Tisch, Harris's daughter was in an investigative assignment prior to her appointment. Contractually, at that point, 18-month rule, she had to promote her. So I'll have to push back on that because I spoke to numerous attorneys because I wasn't promoted to captain because of CCRBs, while other people are still being promoted that had CCRBs and people that have come back from numerous cases of charges where I had no discipline. And what was I told by numerous equal rights employment attorneys is that no guarantee on any promotion, whether it's civil service or a track or some type of appointment, that no promotion is guaranteed. They're supposedly contractually with these tracks, but even with that, I was told there's absolutely no guarantee that they do not have to promote you. If that's the case, Ron Lason, I'd love to bring you down with my attorneys because that's exactly what I was told. VSS Ventura is $10, coffee and donuts. Shout out to you, brother. That thumbnail has Kaz looking like a gendered, confused Mr. Potato Head. This bunch have zero to offer, and their offspring are just as undeserving. John Schell can't fit through the doors, period. Yes, triple fat neck. I hear some people starting to say quadruple fat neck. But absolutely, the entire dais has benefited from some form of nepotism. Keep in mind, what is nepotism? It's connection by family, friends, deity, getting special treatment, preferential treatment in your job, someone with power. Harrison has power. Former Commissioner Dermot Shea has power. All these people have benefit because they're connected to someone of power that put them in the right spots. And that includes Kaz Daughtry and his promotion by Rocket Fuel. And again, we've now come full circle because the attacks in this podcast trying to suppress our First Amendment speech started with that episode about nepotism. There were some grumblings before, but the real attacks came at that point. That was the pinnacle point. So the suppression or attempted suppression of this podcast was never because we're giving out misinformation, is what John Schell had told the public through social media. It's because we attacked, or at least they feel attacked, the insecurities of Kaz Daughtry and John Schell and Tariq Shep and many of these other characters at the top of the job. So again, I'm going to say that Jessica Tisch is a wolf in sheep's clothing, because she comes off as a shiny quarter. She speaks eloquently. She's intelligent, but she knows exactly what she's doing. And I think that she had said it before. She could have stopped this promotion and said, wait a minute. We already have enough appearance of impropriety. We have enough corruption probes. We have a potential play for pay with promotions. Pay for play when it comes to promotions. We're going to stop all these promotions right now and have to vet them before we actually promote them and see what the connection is. And you would see right away there is a relation to Harrison, and that's something that you want to put the stops and brakes on, and there would be no argument there. It's not like she had 15 years on the job and she's now getting promoted. With 3 years on the job in a track, that's a time for you to say, you know what? This just doesn't look right. Am I wrong, John? 3 years on the job connected to Harrison? Wait a minute. With all the stuff going on, this doesn't look right. Let me put the brakes on this and let's investigate this first. Or you know what? I'm not doing this promotion at the time because we don't need any appearance of nepotism. We already have nepotism that equates to corruption at the top of the job right now. And I'm supposed to be the white horse getting rid of this corruption, which is what she told the public in her state of the NYPD 2025. But if anything, we have now gotten worse in 2025. We're just doubling down.
So a couple of things. You know, nepotism also creeps in at the hiring process, right? Because we know plenty of kids that should have got this job, college degrees, athletes, that were red cupped. What was that? They got a beer summons and they were disqualified from the NYPD. At a time when we're hearing that the NYPD is calling back psych candidates, people that failed the psych. So you have kids that didn't fail the psych, but had an interaction with overzealous college campus police and got a summons and couldn't get on this job, right? And we hear the same thing about, I heard grumblings about a Shays kid, same thing. He had a red cup, but he got through. He had a problem. He got held up, but he got through. Wonder why. But then guys like me and you, your son gets on the job. Your son goes to get on the job. He's got a red cup. He's not getting through, right? So I hear what Ron's saying when he's talking about, well, contractually, she was in the squad. I get it. However, I know contractually, a lot of people that were used by Intel because they spoke a different language, they put them up on wires, they were supposedly in investigative spots, and they would kick them out a month before they were about to be promoted. And then if they went the detective route again, they would have to repeat the entire 18 months again, right? And they would do that traditionally. And that happened throughout our time always. You've seen guys and girls in your command, they spoke some weird dialect. They would get put up on a wire, 18-month assignment, and boom, 17 months, they're kicked out and back to patrol. And then they would get scooped back up again a month or two later. You know, and I was like, wow, that's wrong. So she could have easily been pulled out of the track. I think the first thing, if you're going to sit here and give a speech about merit-based, these are merit-based promotions. I think the first thing, the ultimate slap in the face, I think to every supervisor on this job, is that anybody under 5 years could be a detective. It's the ultimate slap in the face. I mean, I was always told you would never get in the squad prior to 5 years. You would never even get on investigative track prior to 5 years. So why can't I be a sergeant? I could be a detective, but I can't be a sergeant. Doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. And then the other thing I see is when we look at the nepotism babies, and we're not just calling out Harrison's kid. She just happens to be the latest example that was on here, the most egregious, maybe not even the most egregious example, but she is the example that we used. When we look at these nepotism babies, you see a huge pattern. They go to patrol for about a year. They go to get hooked up in a detail where they get their shield, whether it's a specialist shield or investigative shield, which they have no business getting. They get promoted to sergeant. They go right to top pay. They get SDS in a unit that they never did a damn thing in. Then they make lieutenant. They're in some other bullcrap unit. Then they get a LSA, and it's all the way up. And then you have these people sitting there in rank of a deputy inspector or inspector, and they have no idea how to do anything on this job. Absolutely nothing. And everyone's like, oh, it happens all the time. Eddie Britton, everybody knows somebody. Everybody knows somebody, right? 100%. But at this rate, at this way, where every single piece of what the operations of the NYPD do has been completely infected with nepotism. Hiring, promotion, transfer, assignment, overtime, anything. Name anything you want. Days off, religious accommodations, who had to take a shot, who didn't, right? Anything you want, name it. Nepotism comes first. And we've never seen it like this. Under Eric Adams, it's a complete swamp of nepotism. That is a swamp on that dais. Swamp.
Shout out to Marlon Bethel. I think Marlon Bethel nailed it, my brother. Finest Unfiltered. Here we go. Let me get this comment right here from Marlon. This is spot on. Contractually, we should have our jobs. But apparently, contract obligations only matter when the regime deems it so. You know what? I think that's the end of the podcast today for me. I think you said it right there. That's exactly it. It's all about nepotism, hypocrisy, absolutely in the face of it. Listen, let me just say this. I don't blame Jessica Tisch for Harrison's family member for being on track. She wasn't there for that. But she can take action now. She's the police commissioner. At any point, at any time, if you're in a leadership position, whether it's the police department, sanitation, or any organization, or if it's Home Depot, you are dealt with a set of cards, and you have to analyze them and evaluate them in a leadership position. And it's the actions that you take then project and change the trajectory of that organization based on your leadership. So Jessica Tisch can't say, there's nothing I could do. Absolutely not. You are the police commissioner. Patrick Donahue was saying there's some type of bill that they have contractually 18 months when it comes to detective track. Yes, I did hear that. But even with that, there is no guarantee to get promoted. She could stop the clock on that and say, wait a minute, this has to be investigated. She could say, we can't do this promotion right now. She shouldn't do this promotion right now, especially since you're supposed to be that white horse. You're actually projecting to the public that you're here to clean house and change the leadership and change the way things are done and making sure that we maintain integrity. How will we maintaining integrity if we're just doing the same things that we did before you got in there? And the appearance of it doesn't look good. You know what? Great question, Eddie West. Shout out to you. What he said earlier is, what do you know that we don't know? We know the same things that everyone here knows. We're just dissecting it and peeling it apart and looking at this. You don't need to be the police commissioner. Say, wait a minute, let's hold off right now. We had enough promotions about nepotism. We have journalists, we have podcasts speaking and critical about this. It doesn't look good. It's not a good appearance for the police department right now. We need to put the brakes on this and investigate this further. And you know what? If she is that good, you know what? We could bring her later on in her career and promote her, but not now. She could do that. She's the police commissioner. I don't see how this promotion can actually go undetected. And maybe if it wasn't for this podcast, maybe it would. Maybe it would be business as usual, John. And everyone would be saying, oh, it is what it is. I'm so tired. If I had $1 for every time we hear it is what it is. Well, if that's the case, and Eddie Britton says, hey, everybody knows somebody. Yeah, and I agree. Maybe everybody knows someone. And throughout your career, you're going to meet people. And you're going to meet people because of your merits, not necessarily because you're related to somebody. And yes, there are always going to be some forms of nepotism. But are we now saying we just have a threshold for it? If that's the case, why is anybody taking any test or anybody trying to go out there and be an achiever? You know what? You should just say to yourselves, if you're not a family member and you don't have a connection, you have no chance. Here you go. You just proved why we have another failure when it comes to recruitment and when it comes to retention.
Yeah. Joe Roscoe, if the PC implemented change, it only affects general population. 100%. And that's what is happening here, right? The overtime constraints are only on you guys who were following the overtime. Right? Because Kaz Daughtry was making overtime in 2024. Is he making overtime in 2025? Why would I think that he's not? Why would you think that he's not? And then the only reason we even looked at the promotion, to be honest with you, is we were getting a ton of messages. Did you hear what she said? He's not playing. Did you hear what she said? And I was like disgusted. I was like, it takes nothing to say something. You have what's what you do that matters, and that's Jessica Tish is playing to the low information people. Just the same way Eric Adams does. Oh, he said this one time. This is why they came after him. Has nothing to do that they stole hundreds of millions of dollars. Every mayor does that. Every mayor does that. And then did you hear what she said? All the promotions will be merit-based going on. And then we're going to talk about contractually. Contractually, Marlon Bethel was required to have been charged with something and receive a department trial. Contractually, the Detectives Endowment Association was supposed to represent him. Contractually, I was supposed to have cooperative dialogue around my religious and medical accommodations. Contractually, the union should have filed an Article 78 for me, or at least even told me about it. No, we're just going to keep it a secret so all their windows pass, right? Contractually, I don't want to hear nothing about contractually because Eric's 100% right. There is no requirement to be promoted just because you're on. And Ron, the people you're talking about are different other people that said that they were going for non-investigative assignments. I'm talking about people that were told that they were on track and boop, and they kept playing with them over and over again. Or how about the guy in the squad that's on track, gets injured on the job, breaks his leg, and now he's got to wait a year. He's got to wait a year till his leg heals before he could get promoted. And they're taking his chart days, and it doesn't matter. And he gave up all his chart days, and he can't get promoted because he was injured. How about that? Contractually, 18 months. But yet he's not a detective. No. The guy broke his leg. He's got more time on the job with a broken leg than this girl's got in patrol experience. But yet she's a detective. Or Shay's son's a detective. And I agree with you, Eric. I don't care if they had $8 million. If they were the best cop ever, you should have to go the route. Right? And this is ultimately why people leave. We see detectives leaving every day. We see people leaving all the time, every day. Now we hear in the whole crime's down for January. Thank the weather. It had nothing to do with anything you guys implemented. It had absolutely nothing to do with anything you guys implemented whatsoever. Why are more cops leaving under this administration than any other time in history? Why have more cops left than any other administration? Eric, before you go, let's just play her video. Let's just hear what she said. She said that. We didn't say that. But yet we have a sanitation liaison last promotion that gets first grade and a girl with less than a year and a half experience on the street who's now promoted to detective, merit-based. And the entire dais is filled with nepotism.
I want all of you to know that all of today's promotions are what we call merit-based promotions. And this is what everyone in the department can expect to see at each and every promotion ceremony going forward. You are here today for one reason and one reason only. You earned it. But as I'm sure you know, you didn't do it alone. Behind every good cop and every good leader is a family who supports them through all the ups and downs of the job. Many of them are here to witness this ceremony and share in your.
That's what you could expect going forward, Eric.
You know, it's amazing, right? I guess when you have a billionaire heiress with a Harvard grad degree, she believes she's smarter than everybody else. And you know what? And can fool everyone else and mask you into believing that everything she's saying is so hunky-dory. Everything's changing, right? It's like she's holding a curtain front, like, oh, you can't see what's behind here, right? Look at that curtain. Look at this beautiful white curtain here, but not showing you what's behind it. I mean, come on. Does she think we're stupid? Nothing has changed. If anything, she's doubled down and doing worse right now at this point by rearranging furniture. As Sal Greco says, you know, that's a great point. We're just playing musical chairs. Nothing has changed. It's absolutely ridiculous at this point. Rob Lukash put a great comment here. I want to read it out if I can find it here. Let me see. Shout out to Rob Lukash because I agree on this one. Let's not blame Harrison's kid, but Harrison should have not pushed her into that position. Now she has to defend her track for the rest of her career Why would any father do that to their kid? I think that's a great point. I just want to clarify that we're not putting any blame on the actual promotee, right? We're not telling you. I mean, who's going to say, you know what, don't promote me, right? But we're blaming the actual people in power that have influenced the NYPD to have these promotions done by rocket fuel. And it's exactly right. I agree. I wouldn't want to do that to my kid. Put them in a position where they always have a target on the back and they always have to justify their existence and why they were promoted. And they're going to wear that shield potentially with shame, because they may have to always explain that. And right in the amount of resistance and reluctance they may get from their peers. But what is indicative to me, as I'm sure, it's highly likely that she will not be part of general population for long. So, Rob, I know at some point they'll probably put her in a position where she's well protected and well blanketed, possibly one police plaza with the right people at the top, and she'll be part of what I always talk about, right? That first tier 1, that circle of nepotism in the upper echelon. Those are my thoughts, but I think it's a great comment, Rob Lucas. You're spot on. I agree.
But and that's basically what I said when it was Shay's kid, when I posted it and all the papers grabbed it and everybody started going nuts, right? I said, I'm not knocking the kid. I hope he has a safe and successful career. But his father and the leadership of the department failed them and the men and women of the NYPD. This lowers morale for all. I'm not saying not to hook up your kid. I'm just saying make it look good, right? Make it look good. Let him go through the ranks a little bit. And that's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? You already could take care of your son. You could get him to any detail he wants to go to, but you have to have him step on people's heads. At least let him do the time. And that's what. So we're not knocking her at all. I'm not knocking her. I'm saying that I'm knocking Jessica Tisch. And everybody's like, oh, what do you guys care? This has always been going on. Yeah, but you know what hasn't been going on? There hasn't been a platform where all the grievances could be aired out to the public, right? Because you guys aren't allowed to talk. You're treated like mushrooms. They feed you shit. They keep you in the dark. They put you in the corner and tell you shut up and don't talk, right? And now, Finance Unfiltered wasn't there before. That's what the difference is. Now it's here. Speaking about rocket fuel, nepotism, Jack, pull up the chart. Let's pull up allegedly the girl that's allegedly Jeffrey Madry's baby's mama. Let's pull up that chart. So if you look at this, you see Ingrid Sanders up here, right? Ingrid Sanders. Let's go 4-year period, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. In 2021, Ingrid Sanders was a police officer. Her base pay was $85,000, right? In 2022, Ingrid Sanders' base pay was $103,000, and she was a detective. So she gets promoted to detective 3rd grade. She makes $140,000 that year. The following year, in 2023, guess what? She's promoted again to 2nd grade. And now her base pay is $118,000. And then the nepotism kicks in further, and she's given a whole lot of overtime, because not only does her overtime rate jump up, but all of a sudden, whatever's happening in the chief of department's office, the first deputy commissioner is not looking at it. We're running an Ash for Cash program, or what we like to call on-duty booty here at the Finance Unfiltered. And she makes $253,000. And then in 2024, guess what? Not only does her base salary increase again to $130,000, because again, she's promoted to detective 1st grade, she makes $352,000, $100,000 more than she made the year prior. Why? Is it because the quality of her work? Was she promoted 3 times in 3 years and amassed an egregious amount of money, almost $1 million in 4 years we paid her to drive Chief Jeffrey Madry? Chief Jeffrey Madry's driver, without the cost of actually feeding him and gas, without the cost of the vehicles and the wear and tear on the vehicles, just one of his drivers, we paid $854,000 $84,878. So almost $1 million for one of Jeffrey Madry's driving. Jeffrey Madry's entire career isn't worth $1 million. Why is his driver worth $1 million in only 4 years? This is egregious nepotism like we've never seen.
And keep in mind, nepotism doesn't just mean family members. Nepotism, that's a tongue twister. Nepotism is family, friends, associates, sexual partners, significant others. Anyone that's getting a benefit from someone that's in a power or in a position of influence. That's exactly what's going on. That's the connection here. Tanya Kinsella made it to her position because her mother has a connection to Philip Banks. All these promotions, Kaz Daughtry by Rocket Fuel, Tariq Shepard by Rocket Fuel, because of their connection to Jeffrey Madry, former chief of department, disgraced chief of department, who, by the way, gets a full retirement. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually gets 3/4. Nothing happened to Jeffrey Madry, just a little bit of embarrassment. John Shell, his promotion because Jeffrey Madry is his mentor. He also worked with Eric Adams when he was in Brooklyn. All these are forms of connections, associates, family, friends, as I said before, sexual partners, relationships, significant others are getting the benefit by people in power. Do not tell me that Ingrid Sanders is so amazing. Was she hanging off the wing of a plane, jumping down into buildings to rescue people? Even then, this is the promotions that we get. This is the amount of money that she's receiving. This is absolutely egregious. This is in the face of the public eye right now. This is public information. We didn't get this by a confidential source. This is public information that is accessible, that you could actually look at and you could dissect it yourself, and it's not hard to identify and see the nepotism, cronyism in this particular promotion and this pay rate of overtime. It's absolutely excessive. It's absolutely egregious, and it's not just nepotism. It equates to corruption. There's no doubt about it. So don't tell me that we have to promote people, because you know what? We don't have to do anything. This department doesn't follow any rules. It's amazing how somehow, I get it. Some people say, well, she has to, and there's certain rules. Since when does the NYPD follow any rules? Marlon Bethel was terminated for asking questions because he wanted to do an FDA-approved vaccine. Since when does this department follow any rules? Sal Greco was terminated for having a relationship with Roger Stone. Eric Adams is out taking pictures with Roger Stone. What rules does the NYPD follow? All of a sudden, now we follow rules? This is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm glad our friends and listeners are catching up here. The only ones that have to follow any rules is general population, so that the NYPD, the top tier, can give the impression that the NYPD follows rules. They do a great job of disciplining the general population, but no one else is paying for it. Jeffrey Madry's riding off into the sunset, getting a full retirement and even 3/4. This is absolutely ridiculous. Look what he's done to Tabitha Foster. Look what he's done to Epps, other women, and he put them in the public eye. This is absolutely ridiculous that he's getting. He's also on the receiving end of nepotism, also by Eric Adams, that he's went into the sunset, getting a full overtime, while there's this complete corruption probe, and he's at the center of the focal point of it. He's the one that created all these monsters. This is insane. This is so egregious, this form of nepotism. Yeah, everybody knows somebody, but to this point, I don't know. I can tell you right now, Jessica Tisch is not that white horse. To me, she's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and she's trying to sell you a bag of goods. And basically what she's telling you is just stupid, and she's smarter than you. She's going to tell you, oh, everything's going great, while she's doing the same thing they were doing before. Come on. I'm tired. I'm tired of these lies. And that's what Jessica Tisch is doing. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else.
So, this is an amazing picture right here, I think. Congratulations, Detective Ingrid Sanders, Office of the Chief of Department, on her well-deserved promotion to Detective First Grade. 3 promotions in 3 years. And now she's retired. Making a whole lot of money, right? $353,000. She's going out on half pay of that, plus whatever overage she had. Significant amount of money every month she's making. So let's not just focus on Ingrid Sanders, though. Let's focus on the Crumbs administration. Has anybody done an analysis and said, how much have we paid for Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, Tanya Kinsella, Jeffrey Madry, Ed Caban, for just those 5? Oh, Tariq Shepard too. 6. Those 6. How much have we paid for their entourage? Vehicle costs, driver's costs. I heard that like Kinsella had an egregious amount of drivers, like something insane, like 10 or something like that. I don't know how true it is, but there was some. It was a big number of drivers she had. So how much is that? If we're just taking one person, mind you, the $400,000 lieutenant, we're not even talking about in the chief of department's office. We're just talking about one person right now that for a 4-year period cost New York City taxpayers $1 million to drive Chief Jeffrey Madry. One person. Take 6 of those people. Now add that up, plus the cost of the wear and tear. How much? I mean, it's got to be in the $40-50 million range, just their entourage. New York City's paying for the Crumbs administration entourage. Now add in Banks, add in Pearson, add in Eric Adams, who said he wasn't going to have a security detail because if the city's safe, the mayor doesn't need a security detail. In case any of you don't remember, I can play that video for you again. Obviously, the city's not safe because he has the biggest security detail of any mayor in New York City history. So, and now even under his police officers need security details. If I'm the chief of department, I don't need a security detail. Believe me, I'd like to have a driver, yeah, because you need to run out at any given moment. But you don't need a security detail. I mean, it's ridiculous. What are you afraid of? You're a cop.
I'm glad you brought that up. We should also mention the embroidery for this upper echelon. I mean, we've never seen
that's chump change, bro. It's a few $1 million. That's nothing. A drop in the hat, you know.
You're right. I mean, if $1 million for this administration is nothing. I mean, we've never seen so many costumes for an administration. So many dress ups. And Caban had guayabas. He had all kinds of stuff for police commissioner. Cass Daughtry had so many different uniforms. John Shell. I mean, you and I were like flabbergasted. Who's doing the embroidery for all these guys? This costs a lot of money. But you're right. In the grand scheme of things, it's small potatoes compared to this. The amount of security. I mean, we saw it when the upper echelon decided to do this perception versus reality campaign. And they went down in the subways and Tanya Kinsella was interviewing people in the subways, asking people, how do you feel when she's surrounded by a complete security detail? I guess I feel good today.
We'll save now.
But, according to Cass Daughtry, if there's 4 million people that ride a subway and 3 maniacs, it's okay. I mean, look how many people ride the subway. But it goes back to what we're saying. The amount of money spent by this upper echelon is completely irresponsible. There needs to be some type of forensic audit just to figure out how much they spent, how much of it was unnecessary in comparison to their predecessors. I would love to see that. I would love to see that data. And it's probably astronomical, John, those numbers. But if this here doesn't paint the picture, I hope you can zoom it in. I couldn't see it earlier, but if you just zoom in on the full screen, you can see the template here and see the pay grades, the pay raises for Ingrid Sanders. It is insane. Jack, thank you so much. Take a look here. It's wild.
Jack, zoom out of that and go back to the other thing, please. Pull it back up and zoom out of it.
Yeah, it's just so egregious right now, Ingrid Sanders. Again, associates, family members, friends, significant others. This is just insane. I don't see how do we get to the point where we just say it is what it is? At what point are we going to collectively get together? We're doing it right now as we build this network. But along the active members, the unions to say, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. We're getting to the point where promotions don't mean anything anymore. You can walk through the door if you have the right last name, pretty much within a year, you're going to be on track. What does that say to every young man or woman that's grinding out there right now who's going to go on these new Q teams and go out there and make arrests, doing intrusive police work? Well, you know what? If they're part of general population and they're on these teams, they're not headed for promotion. they're headed to deteriorate their own careers because it's going to get stained with CCRBs. Unless you're fortunate enough to be tied to tier 1 and they protect you from these CCRBs. But other than that, it could only hurt your career. It's not going to help you.
So let's look at Kaz Daughtry, right? So 2022, he was a no. Don't zoom out of that. Don't zoom out of that. Don't zoom in. Zoom out. Let's look at Kaz Daughtry. 2022, he's a second grade detective. He makes $118,000 base pay. That year, he makes $195,000. 2023, he's now a first grade detective. And then during that time, he gets promoted to assistant commissioner. His base pay is $135,000. He makes $260,000 that year. So he makes $130,000 in overtime. 2024, he's now a deputy commissioner. So he gets bumped up all the way through the ranks. His base pay is $276,000. But that year, he makes $328,000, even though deputy commissioners and assistant commissioners can't make overtime. So in total, for 3 years, Kaz Daughtry's made about $800,000. New York City's paid him personally. Never mind his 7 confidential Craylo cars. Never mind his security team of little young white men, soft little ones that he likes to drive around with. Little boys, I should say. Young rookies that he seems to like so much. So never mind them, because then when you add that up, we're going to be in the millions of dollars to support Kaz Daughtry, who's afraid to drive around the streets of New York City by himself. I could see him having a driver, but does he need an entourage? So Kaz Daughtry's entourage, again, is in the millions of dollars.
This is just so egregious. I'm writing down the information just so I have it. Of course, as with, trying to figure out the percentages here. But in that 1 year that you mentioned, he made $135,000. That was his actual base salary. And then he made $260,000. So he pretty much doubled his salary. So in order to double your salary, you have to almost work. I was just trying to work it out here. I didn't finish. You were still talking. You pretty much have to work more hours in overtime than your actual base salary, which to me is not even possible. So this opens the door for a lot more questions. So yes, we don't want to build walls in the NYPD. We want to open doors, but not open doors to corruption. But this here opens doors to and opens windows to a lot of questions. How do you double your salary in that year? Almost double the percentage-wise. I'm trying to do the math right here. I don't even think it's possible. That 1 year that he made $276,000 as his base pay, and then he makes $328,000 when you're not even supposed to make overtime at that pay grade. That's another thing. That's another window that needs to be looked at. That's completely egregious at that point. Again, goes back to what I'm saying here, my friends and listeners on the podcast. And I really appreciate your input. It's great that we have these discussions. And some of you have some valid points. You know what? In a world of policy, in a world of rule and law, in another organization, I think you might be right? There's certain things they can't do, certain things they can do. But this NYPD doesn't follow any rules. I mean, clearly, we could see it right here. This is evidence-based information. They don't follow any rules. So why would it be any different when it comes to tracking people for promotions? And John, you're spot on. I've seen it too. I've seen people that speak Farsi, that speak other Arabic languages that have been used and abused and put in these intel units, promised detective. They work them to the bone, and then at the 16th, 17th month, they pull them out. And supposedly, that's supposed to be good time saved. That if you then put in a squad or another track unit, that would be time that you've already worked, and you would only have to add to that time to get promoted. And that's a complete lie. And in many cases, you're absolutely right, John, they have to go back on another 18-month track and start from the beginning. And yet, all this information about contractual, I don't see the union stepping in. I don't see it at all. Just more forms of egregiousness and complete hypocrisy.
Yeah. So, do you think Kaz was running an ask for cash program? Is the question, or did he have an on duty booty program? He may have. Jack, do us a favor. Take that off the screen. Take Kaz. He's done. He's done. We paid, taxpayers paid enough for him. We've seen it about enough for him. All right, everybody. So we're gonna bring you a little executive perspective. Tired Inspector Ron Lason's gonna come on. Talk about overtime from the not overtime, not ask for cash or not on duty booty. We're gonna talk about nepotism. Nepotism from the executive perspective. I honestly think it's worse for them. So let's hear what Ron's got to say.
Ron, morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning. We had a little pushback here. I'm glad that you're jumping in. We get your perspective. Let's go.
There's not pushback. It's just it's different perspectives. But just quick on the Harrison thing. Again, I'm not saying that I agree with Rob Lukash 100% that the father, Rodney should not have pushed her into that position so early in her career. I'm a firm believer that you have to do your time. You have to earn your time before you get put into those positions. I did it in the command. You had to have a certain amount of time before you could put in for a specialty unit, even if you were good. And the bosses would come to me and say, hey, this guy's good. This girl's good. She should go into conditions of crime. Now, listen, that's great. Have them keep doing what they're doing. They're on track to go on track. And, Rodney shouldn't have put her in that position. It was selfish of him. And like Rob said, now she's going to have to, justify her career for the rest of her career. Whereas if she had done 5 years on patrol, she had done, good patrol, gone out there, made her collars, done whatever she had to do, had a positive record, and then got put into the squad. Listen, people are going to look, but, as long as she can prove herself, that's one of the things that's important. So, as far as that's concerned, I mean, and again, there's different, nepotism is huge on this job. It always has been huge on this job. It's not going to go away. It's always going to be there. And there's different forms of nepotism. We've talked about this in the past where, bringing people along with you as you move up in the ranks. I did it. I brought a very select few people with me, but they didn't get the benefits that other people got. I mean, I'm a small fish in a big pond, but I brought people on based on competency and based on the fact that they are loyal, but loyalty only goes so far. It's loyalty to get the job done and know that they're going to accomplish my mission and for the betterment of the department, not because I'm drinking buddies with them, not because, I just hung out with them and they were friends of mine. Everybody that was on my team, and Eric, you can attest to it. I had a small team and every one of them was not one person could say they weren't competent. And they also didn't abuse the fact that they worked for the boss. There are those people that, drive bosses, work for the bosses and everything else. And then when they call people, they talk as if they're the boss. That was never the case. My people were not allowed to do that. I was very strict with that you call up and listen, if my sergeant or my lieutenant is calling your command, they're calling on behalf of the boss, but they're going to do it respectfully, and that does it. And I saw somebody's comment just now is that, don't abuse the hook. 100%. I've helped people get interviews, get into positions by once they get them into the interview, making phone calls to people conducting the interview saying, hey, listen, I'm going to put my name behind this person. But again, not because we're buddies, because I think that person has earned the spot. I think that person has done the job. And I did it for people in your unit, Eric, and said, listen, this person is deserving of the spot. I'll put my name behind it. But then I would tell the people also, listen, I'll make a phone call. I'll put my name behind you. Once you get there, you prove yourself and continue doing whatever you did that got my recommendation to earn and keep your spot. You're not going to get there and go, oh, this is Lason's guy, so he's untouchable. Hell no. I've had people call me up and go, Ron, what? Well, all right, I'm sorry. If it's a mistake, then just take care of it.
Ron, like, there's always been nepotism, and I agree with you. There'll always be nepotism. But
Correct.
Have you ever seen anything like this? Is this reminiscent of any other time? I mean, when I'm looking at the dais, I'm literally and I'm saying I even see people in the second row that don't deserve to be there, and I'm saying, like, why? Not that they don't deserve it, but they got there through nepotism. And again, I'm saying that I've never seen it like this. The Adams administration has been a swamp, and the NYPD has been a swamp. And I'm talking not only promotion, not only transfer, hiring, and the overtime, which is insane. It's insane. Like it's craziness.
Ron, before you answer, I just want to say this, because I just want to summarize what you're saying, and I just want to analyze it and just make a comparison to what we see right now. And I think what you're saying is
Eric. I'm not comparing to the current administration.
I know.
I'll comment on what John just said. Even though you know what, guys, I don't like to be negative.
But hear me out for a second, because I want to make the comparison. I'm not saying that you're making the comparison. I'm making the comparison because what I'm saying is I don't believe what you're indicating is nepotism. I believe what you're doing is recommendations, and we should have recommendations, right? But you have a team. You brought these people in. They're your team because you trust them and because they're competent and they do a good job. To me, that's not nepotism. Now, if they're in a position to get promoted or another assignment and you recommend them and say, hey, these people are good, here's why. So to me, you're not using your power and in your position to influence them, which is what we're talking about here with nepotism. The nepotism that we see here is so egregious that they're using their power, they're using their influence to promote people on this fast track by rocket fuel that shouldn't be in these positions of promotion. So I think yours is completely different. I think what you're talking about is what good leaders and good bosses should do. You should advocate and you should recommend these people that worked hard for you that deserve it. But you're not making the connection. You're not moving them in a direction that they don't deserve because there's some type of benefit for you, because they're a family member, because they're an associate. That's the comparison. So that's why I want you to answer John's question, but I just want to preface with that, and I appreciate it.
No, I agree with you 100%. And again, I hate to be the negative and speak specific people, but I agree that this administration is not on par with its appointments as previous administrations. I agree it's more of a good old boy network and putting people into position because of your relationship and not your competency. There's core competencies that people have. There's people that, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus is the old expression, right? And this bus has 3 wheels and it's going down the road all crooked. Because it's off balance. The people aren't in the right seats. There are some people that are in the right seats, and there's a lot of people that aren't in the right seats, and they're in the seats because of past relationships. And we've seen it, and we've seen the administration and how the administration is kind of falling apart because people that were put in these positions abused these positions and had to step down under investigation and whatnot. So I agree with you 100% that type of nepotism of the good old boy network. Listen, you're always going to bring people along that but again, the right thing to do is to bring those people and put them in the right position. Looking out for people is one thing, taking care of people is one thing. There's all different types of nepotism. I saw an earlier comment. Somebody asked a question, how do you guys feel about, we call them legacy hires when I was in candidate assessment, someone that comes on the job who's a child of a line of duty death member. And do they get preferential treatment? Well, do they get preferential treatment in the hiring process? Well, they're going to get fast tracked and they're going to get looked at. But I've had, while I was there, I know it's a whole different show and I don't want to go off kilter, but I've had legacy people that we've had to disqualify because of issues that they've had. And it probably came because of the life that they led because of the tragedies that happened. So it's not a push through completely. And if they do get on the job, you're going to see the legacies are absolutely going to be, fast tracked into investigatory assignments or specialty units or whatnot.
And it's still wrong, in my opinion. It's still wrong. I look at McDonald's kid, and I'm like, all right, he's a nice kid. Why does he go ahead of me? Why?
Ahead of you in what way?
In every way. Why is he getting SDS? Why is he making detective? Why is he making SDS? Why is he making LSA? Why is he going to be first a deputy inspector? Why doesn't his merit speak for itself? Now, I see that there's trauma in the family, and the job does a lot for those line of duty families, as they should. But what does that have to do with his career? Why does his career have to be fast tracked? I don't see it at all. And then, I've interacted with a couple of people on this job that their fathers were chiefs, and they didn't know what the hell they were doing. I had a chief's son one time hand me a DIR when he had 5 years on the job and go, I don't know how to fill this out. And I ripped it out of his hand, and I ripped it up and threw it in the garbage. And I was like, well, learn.
Yeah.
Learn. I said, learn. Daddy can't fill that one out for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've listen, in many of my positions in the executive, because remember, I was an executive for over 20 years, and I was in a lot of different positions that dealt with, especially a candidate assessment. And as a precinct commander, you get a lot of phone calls. You get a ton of phone calls from, executives and whatnot. When it's their specific relative, it gets a little touchy. But yeah, it's tough to deal with those types of people that feel like I think there's a whole generation that feels entitled. But these children of, upper executives, a lot of them do feel completely entitled, and they're treated completely entitled, and they're treated with kid gloves. And I personally never did it. I had no problem getting on the phone with chiefs that make phone calls for people to go into units or whatever and say, listen, chief, is this like your kid? Or is this like, your landscaper's kid, and you're just making a phone call for them because, I'm going to tell you X, Y, and Z about that person. And if you want me to still heavily consider them, you let me know or call me back. And I'm telling you, tons of times they never call me back, But you got, you take consideration like this on this job. We always talk about taking care of each other and looking out for one another. And, I personally feel the legacies, their family is sacrificed. I know you may not feel it's completely fair, but I think that they should have a leg up. If it's a legacy versus a John McCary, and again, now if the legacy is a 0 and John McCary's a hero, the legacy is not going to win in my book.
Ron, let me say this:
the legacy is a hero right off the bat.
Right, exactly.
The legacy is a hero right off the bat. I mean, and it's
not
sorry,
necessarily,
but that's just what it is.
But that's what we see.
No, I understand that because again, we're talking about the exception and not the rule. And I know it's like the rule for those, but there are very few in a department that's rather large. So, yes, the legacies are going to get to step up. But that's only one part of it. I don't think that taking care of your own is as big of a problem as taking care of your buddies, and again, competency. And again, you have to make your own, name, which I think is very important. And, if you get a step up, you better step up, in my eyes. And again, is that the rule? No, it's not the rule. Is that what really goes on all the time? No, it's not what really goes on all the time. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, it is what it is, whatever. Listen, I've personally been affected by nepotism. I've personally been affected by DEI. I've personally been affected by, all types of stuff. And I couldn't let it affect the way I was going to do my business and change my attitude and my perspective on the way I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to accomplish my goals, and I'm going to treat my people. I'm not going to treat my people differently because I was treated differently. And again, I'm not denying the nepotism. I'm not denying the excessive nepotism in this administration by any means. I just think, I don't think it's as rampant. Take away administrative appointments at this point. Now let's go back down to, You know, the everyday. Let's talk about, you know. All right, Harrison's kid got fast tracked. Harrison kid got put into an investigative assignment. She got put into the real-time crime center, not even a squad. She got put into the real-time crime center. Boom, her clock starts. You know, and as Patrick said, you know, it's a city law that, you know, that was put in effect that if you do 18 months in an investigative assignment, you're going to get promoted to detective, absent a negative evaluation or some type of derogatory, you know, something that happens in your career. You have to, by law, be promoted. So that's why, you know,
can I stop you right there?
comment.
You just said by law. This NYPD, this administration, the upper echelon has not followed any rule or any law.
No, so Adam tells them follow the law, Eric. You're wrong.
He does tell us to follow the law. That's true. But I just want to say this.
Adam's telling we better follow it. That's his direction.
I think you're making great points, but I just want to say this. I believe we can't have it both ways, right? John and I made a great argument, I believe, on this podcast where we advocated for a police officer. Unfortunately, it turned out that police officer potentially was lying, but that his father had ties to Michael Dowd, and people are saying, why was this particular cop who was a state trooper, why was he hired? His father was corrupt with Michael Dowd. And John and I both said, you know what, before there was any reason to believe he was lying, who cares? We don't care who his father is. It has nothing to do with him. If he's a potential candidate and he has the tools, he should be hired. So for me, it makes no difference. If your father was in the line of duty, why does that affect your hiring ability? You have a different life. Could you potentially get points maybe to a test or maybe an interview? But when it comes to the hiring process,
no, John, Eric, I've told you that I personally have disqualified legacy candidates because of derogatory information in their history. They didn't get overlooked, and it was brought to me as the executive officer and go, boss, you know, let's look at this case. And we've done case reviews and been like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. And I've had to actually get on the phone with the first deputy commissioner and explain to the first deputy commissioner why I'm not hiring X, Y, and Z's son. And it is what it is. And they respected my evaluation and my reasoning. And it wasn't just a red cup. The problem with red cups and drinking and everything else, a red cup summons is not going to hold you up on the character side. It's going to be more of an issue upstairs in the psychological side. And again, John, Eric, we're going to have that we'll have a whole podcast on the candidate assessment, you know, when time comes. But, you know, that becomes a problem with the drinking issue that the psychological assessment unit looks at. And, you know, and that's been a subject of quite the debate when I was there. You know, and as far as, you know, with the colleges, John, you're 100% right. You know, with the overzealous RAs that want to rat out people that are in their dorms doing drinking. I've had candidates that have been gigged for, you know, alcohol in a room with an underage person because somebody that's not 21 is in a dorm room with somebody that's 21, and the 21-year-old is legally drinking, but the alcohol's in there and they're 18. So they got written up for having alcohol when they had nothing to do with the alcohol. So, I mean, again, I don't want to get off this topic of the nepotism and the promotion thing. But, you know, when you talk about the discretionary promotions and you talk about, you know, the 18-month track is pretty much, you know, a lock. You know, you have to do something wrong, get negative evaluations.
Do you agree? Do you agree with people going on the 18-month track under 5 years?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's what I said. And I said it in the comments earlier that I don't agree that Shay's son should have been put in the track with 2 years on the job. I don't agree with Harrison's daughter, who I believe had less than 5 years when she was put in the track. I don't know exactly how much time she has on, but I remember his two daughters getting on the job when he was still on the job. So it wasn't that long ago. So I don't know how much time she had before she got put into the real-time crime and started her clock. But once the clock starts, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, once they are there, they are legally entitled, if they do 18 months of honest work and, you know, non-disciplinary and they're not getting negative evaluations, by law, they got to get promoted. And you know, Patrick said, you know, when you brought up the kid who broke his leg, there is a grievance where once they get their 18 months and they get promoted, they can put a grievance in for line of duty time and get a retroactive promotion date. So there are things in place for certain things like that, as well as when you have that 18 months, like, listen, once I have 18 months, my promotion might get delayed because of promotions or whatever. But once I get promoted, it'll be a retroactive date to my 18th month. But then there's the discretionary promotions, which is more of a problem, which is more of a subjective promotion.
That's the premise of
There is an
I don't
official.
think so. I don't think it's more of a problem. I think both of them are the same because the people that get into the track, there's a form of nepotism. I went for an interview for the squad. I think I had like 120 something collars. I was 5 years on the job, zero discipline. I solved, I don't even know how many patterns, countless. I had awards from congressmen, my senator, city council, the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. I won Cop of the Month every year for like 2 years, every month. And like literally took everything down. I go for my interview. Now, I didn't deserve to get in the squad. There were guys that were in the 120 precinct that were in crime that had like 12, 13 years on hundreds of collars, 300, 400 collars. I'll never forget it. The chief, I can't remember his name, but the chief at the time says to me, I like you. You're a sharp kid. You're way too young to get in the squad. I was like, well, I want to go in the squad. I said, I'm going to be a boss. I said, but I wanted to get some investigative experiences, but I respect it. We were in the interview. And they literally said I had the best interview out of everyone that they took. You're not going to get it. You're too young. The kid that gets it, 2 years on the job, lost a prisoner, off-duty incident, 20 collars off the radio.
Right, John,
and I'm like, this job is bullshit. And not that I should have got it. I didn't even think I should get it. I thought the guys with 13, 14 years on that had the 300-400 collars that have been in the route, and maybe I was a little bit more high performing than them based upon my time, my lack of time, but they should have got it. They earned it. And like, to me, what happened to their morale? What happened to those guys? You lose those guys. Those guys are done.
I agree. I'm not denying it. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying the boss that interviewed you was more of an old school boss. It sounds like whoever the chief was. Sounds like they were old school boss, and they were doing the right thing at the interview process. But then, the quote unquote shit happens where a phone call was made for that 2-year wonder, and that guy got put in. Now there's the nepotism again, but the vast majority, listen, phone calls are made like all the time for those interviews. So like there's a ton of people go for those interviews, and they sit there and they take the interviews. And I used to call up and I used to make phone calls for people that work for me all the time. And I would, what I'd say? They're coming for an interview. Then after the interview, I'd speak to the people at the interview and I'd say, how'd they do on their interview? Because if they went there and shit the bed, then there's only so much you could do, where some of it you can mitigate by explaining, the person's character, the person's performance from a firsthand knowledge. Again, I didn't call up, to hook up my people, my boys, or whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that there is, but the detective route is a different thing. Getting into the detective squad, yeah, again, it's you put an application, you get called down at a borough level. Again, it's different in every borough. It's not the same across the board. I saw earlier in the comments that somebody said there should be a defined track or process to get in. It is a process, but again, everything is subjective. Everything is subjective to the people doing the interview, to the phone calls that are made. Again, very heavy on the phone calls. Very heavy on the phone calls.
Ron.
All right, before I need to go, hold on. We got another executive perspective we're bringing up to the stage right now. Everybody, Chief Rob Lukash, the executive perspective.
Good morning.
What's up, Rob? How are you?
Rob, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Eric? How's everybody?
Spoke to you the other day. I'm so glad that you're here. Listen, and Rob, I want you to answer on this also. You know what, Rob? If you could go first on this, and then I want to hear your take on Ron, because you just brought up phone calls, right? I think this is a great point, right? So I don't want to ask you if this actually happened to you, because I don't want to put you at odds on anyone, but I just want to ask how you feel about this and what this does to morale to the job, because I've seen this and we've all seen it. You're a commanding officer in a precinct. I'm not saying this has happened to you. You don't have to say, I don't want to put you on odds, But imagine someone, rhetorically speaking, is a commanding officer, and I've seen it. John, you've seen it too. And they get a phone call by some chief. Say, hey, you got some kid in your precinct. Put him in anti-crime. Like, well, this kid's got a year on the job, right? And he's not
100%
ready
happens.
for it.
100% happens. 100% happens.
Well, what does that do to you as the commanding officer? What does that do to the precinct? What does that do to morale? Rob, if you could answer first, and then Ron, I want to hear you tape with these phone calls. What does that do? Because to me, that is one of the most egregious forms of nepotism. That's a disease that has ripped through this department. Rob, by the way, great having you. Your background looks awesome.
Thanks. Want me to answer, Eric, first? Or?
Yeah. I want to. Yes, please.
All right. So that completely erodes your authority. It completely erodes everybody's belief that everything's on the level, and if you work hard, you're going to be able to get to where you want to be. Because what that does is that puts somebody in there that you personally don't feel maybe at that time that they're competent enough or they should be in that position. And if you feel that, I guarantee you that everybody else in the command feels the same thing. So now all of a sudden it's like, hey, what's going on? Why is this person getting there? So yeah, it completely erodes everything that you believe. And for a CO to happen to a CO like that, that's not fair. That really is not fair to him or her. And it's not fair to the person, like I said earlier, it's not fair to the person that they're putting in there, because now, does that person even want it? Am I getting somebody that even wants to work? What am I doing? Am I putting somebody on a track to maybe go to narcotics or somewhere else?
That's a great point.
So it completely erodes it. And it should not be done. It should. I mean, as an executive, I would never call and say, hey, put this person in there if I didn't feel they were competent. There may be circumstances where I said, hey, this guy's a good worker and I've seen him work, and maybe call and say, how come he hasn't been or she hasn't been put in anti-crime? But I would still leave that up to the CO of that precinct. That's your house, and you should run it the way you want.
Yeah, I agree with Rob 100%. And I was the precinct commander of two commands, and I've got numerous calls. I was the 111 CO, the hook house, one of the hook houses. So you got a bunch of people there that were great people. We talked about it on my interview. I loved being in the 111. Everybody in the 111 loved being in the 111. It was Nassau County West. They were right over the border.
That's a great spot.
Yeah, we had Nassau County 6th Precinct on our radio, in case we had to go over the border. It was that close, because we bordered the Nassau County. But I would get phone calls all the time, more in the 110 than in the 111, because in the 111 there wasn't much going on, and they were just happy to be there, and there wasn't a lot to do in the 111. But in the 110, I used to get phone calls all the time. And again, like I said, see, I was a strong enough personality to push back. I didn't care what your rank was. I would do it respectfully. But, again, I would say, Chief, where's the connection? Where's the connection with this? Because I'll tell you where this person sits in the pecking order for this position. More times than not, most times they would be like, okay, all right, Ron, thanks. Because it was, but then there's other times where they're like, yeah, I don't care. And it's a terrible position to be in. You bring the person in, you talk to the person, you tell them, listen, earn it, earn this spot, because you're going to get this spot. I'm letting you know that you're only getting it because X, Y, and Z called me. And everybody knows it. There's no secrets to it. Everybody knows, because the thing is that most of these kids aren't smart enough to even keep it to themselves when phone calls come in for them. They yak it up. Like
you two are stand-up leaders.
Like,
and you
it's a badge of honor that Uncle Joe called me.
I'm saying your friends and listeners give you a lot of recognition. But what about the captain who knows he's never getting promoted? He knows he's being discriminated against. Maybe he's kind of a weak personality, and they're like, listen, move this guy. There's some good stuff going to happen for you.
And they do it, but those are the commands that don't thrive, Eric. Those are the commands that don't thrive. Those are the commands. If you're going to be, a puppet to the puppet master and not run your command is going to run into the ground. You have to stand your ground. And it's the old adage of, I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. Listen, it's my shop. I'm going to do what's best for my shop until I'm ordered otherwise. And that's the way I ran my shops, you know?
So I'm going to ask you all something right now. So I continuously say it. I'm continually called a liar by someone with a fake handle who is the highest ranking uniform member of service right now. But I continuously say more people have retired, vested, which means retired early, or resigned during this administration, under this administration, than any other time in history. So now we have this massive exodus, and that's by the numbers alone. It's not by the January class. It's not because these were the big classes. That does have an effect on it, but that has nothing to do with the amount of people that are vesting and resigning. So that only has to do with the retirement.
Right, but Eric, but also, John, what, just because it was a big class in 2005 and their 20-year anniversary came up, why are they leaving at their 20-year mark perfectly?
Exactly. And so that, and here's the question I have for all of you. It's this. So we have all these people leaving that wouldn't have. 100%, I agree with you. Even that statement that they're big classes only affects the service retirement. But traditionally, people would stay 25 years. I know I was going to stay at least 25
is a new 20.
Eric was probably going to stay 25 years. I already had that plan in my head. So
I was staying until I was 63.
Leaving. But now the rank of detective, you're seeing a lot of guys leave, third graders. And I'm looking at all their posts, and all their poster, there's no point for me to stay. I'm never getting promoted. It's trapped in the same trap. It's redundant. I don't want to do this anymore. How has this nepotism in assignment, in overtime, in transfers, and promotion, how has this affected the overall morale of the NYPD, and what could be done to change it?
Well, there's to change it. It's change the administration, but listen, there's a process in place. The grid, and I can explain how the grid is set up, but it's completely gone by the wayside. And there's a defined process. I mean, at the command level, you put people in that you feel are worthy for special assignment pay or for specialist shields. Now, I'll talk on the patrol end. I'm sure it's pretty much the same on the squad, where the squad commanders put it into their and Patrick can answer for this. They put it into their detective bureau. Detective bureau then will vet out who the squad commanders put in. Then the list shrinks at the bureau level, and then you send it up to the bureau, and the bureau has a list that they submit. And there's actually 3 different grids. There's a first deputy commissioner's grid. There's a chief of department's grid, and then there's the PC's grid. And just because you're on the grid doesn't mean you're going to get promoted, because then there's this one's getting promoted anyway list, that nobody ever sees. So the problem is that's the list that's been getting more activity than those that deserve it. Now, the guys in the squad that are in the chat will tell you, it was always hard. It was not easy to be in the squad and to get grade. It wasn't, but you see, and I saw it, even in the bureaus, because then when promotions come around, they have an allotment. All right, we're going to promote, from personnel, X amount of second graders, X amount of first graders, and we're going to make X amount of specialists or whatnot. Oh boy. And
there you go.
Look at that smile.
Oh my God.
There's no paperwork on his desk. What is he doing there?
That's my. Where is that?
Got a picture of Kaz in the background there.
I think that's the 110. But anyway, so you got the you have the different grids, and you're putting these people on these lists, and it gets whittled down. And in the squads, it was merit based, and then of course there's always going to be, the phone calls and whatnot to follow it up. But you just see that now. Oh, I'm sorry. If you threw the picture up, threw me off. When I was in the housing bureau, I saw it firsthand where, all right, they're going to make X amount of second graders. Then the chief would get a phone call and say, all right, you're getting X spots. And then what would you see? You would see the people in their office getting all the grade. You know, you'd see the people in their office. Every supervisor in the housing bureau has the money, you know. And I'm not saying that from the current chief of housing. I'm talking about people that, you know, just the way it is. And you look at the patrol boroughs, same thing. You know, you look at the admin lieutenant in the patrol borough. I guarantee you, out of all the boroughs, almost every one of them has the money or is gonna have the money soon if they haven't been there that long. And again, I don't agree with that. I think that the people that are out there doing God's work should be the ones. And I personally, when I was a borough commander for Housing Bronx Queens, same thing. My 3 PSAs would have to send me up a list of who they wanted to get the discretionary promotions. And then I would vet that down because the Bureau would tell me, Ron, you have X amount of lieutenant spaces, X amount of sergeant spaces, X amount of specialist spaces. And so I would have to sit there and have conversations with the executives in the commands and say, all right, listen, I know you're sending me 5 names, but who's really your top 1 or 2 guys? And then I'd have to whittle it down. And then I'd have my staff also. But, I went at odds with a couple of my people on my staff because, they do a very important job for me. They've worked for me in several commands. So I'm taking their career and their work as a whole, not just necessarily as the Housing Bronx Queens admin lieutenant or Comstat sergeant or whatever the case may be. And if I put them on my list, you know, I'll give you one example for the specialist shields. I had
Ron, 3 minutes, bro. We're on a 2-hour show.
I had six.
I can add something to this.
That's why Ron had the window open with the sunlight.
The sun's going down already.
The sun's going down. The sun's coming down. But just to show you, like I had 6 spots. The cop that worked for me personally was number 6, because the 5 above them were all the guys on Eric's team and the FIO teams and the other, you know, anti-crime teams that were out there doing the work were 1 through 5. And, you know, my guy never got promoted, but other people did, because I thought that was the fair and the right way to do it. But exception, not the rule, maybe. Go ahead, Rafa. I know.
So we would get lists from all the subunits, and then, like Ron said, we would put our list together. Now the grid, as we would say, would be the list of the names that you felt were due for promotions, and our top guy was the one we felt out of all of SOD who would get the first. But yeah, then so you get the phone, you'd go and tell these guys, hey, Joe, you're on the grid. We put you here, and they're all ecstatic about it. And you know, because you want to tell people that they're doing good work. You want to show that, hey, we believe that you're doing work. We know you're doing good work, and we're putting you on this grid so that you get promoted. And then what happens? The promotions come down. Nobody on our grid gets it.
Right.
It's all, now you're like, the guy's looking at you, they're looking at you, is like, well, what happened? And you're like, you know what happened? Exactly what Ron said. Somebody from the PC's office, somebody from the chief of departments got it, somebody there, somebody hook wasn't even in the unit long enough, jumped over you. So you just say, listen, hold on, we're gonna you're still on our grid, we're gonna keep pushing for you or whatever. It would usually take, my boss Harry Whedon would have to go and specifically go to the PC and say, hey, listen, you've jumped over all our guys so far. Nobody from SOD has gotten any promotions in the last 3 months. Can you do something for us? And then maybe you get one, right? So this erodes everything that you stand for as a supervisor, trying to push for people. And it just completely, it's a unfair way to do it. If you're going to give me a grid and you're going to give me numbers that I can push my people, then at least have the respect and courtesy to promote the people that I feel should get promoted.
And it's been vetted up. It's not just who Rob Lukash thinks. It's been vetted from the lower, supervisory positions, commanding positions up to the bureau.
Right. I was always told that, there was 2 lists, right? There was the people that did the work, and then there was the other list, the people that didn't do
the other guys.
And they would say, they would tell me, don't get mad if somebody from the other list gets promoted, because that's not the list you're on. There's a whole nother list. If somebody from your list who works gets promoted over you, all right, then maybe then you have reason to say, hey, there's something on. But there's always going to be people on that other list that get promoted and pushed up. And there's
so Rob, we could arguably say that we've been accurate. We say that it's a 3-tiered system. Everything that I've ever heard about this grid, it's like the secret squirrel society, because we talk about transparency, because nobody ever has seen this grid or grids. And
it's very, very
right?
high level eyes only.
Yeah.
What's questionable to me is, why is there several grids anyway? Because to me, the bottom line is, it seems to me that there's this supposed grid, but really what it is this promotions by rocket fuel. So really there's a supposed grid, but when someone gets promoted by rocket fuel, that's really the nepotism grid. Because I've seen it myself. I was on the grid for almost 10 years. Oh, you're getting promoted. And what is that?
Eric,
what does
right,
that?
but again, part of it is, like Rob said, is Harry Reid had to go and really push to get some of his people promoted. It's a true statement that you have to keep them relevant. You have to keep somebody relevant to get them promoted. And Eric, in your case specifically, I can tell you that you had to be kept relevant. I personally sat down with the chief of department and fought on your behalf because you.
How many times did you put Eric in for the money before he got it?
I personally, he was my number one choice at the borough for the years that I was at the borough. Every year that I got there in 2018, I left there in 2021. So for the 3 years I was there, Eric was number one. But so what year did you get promoted, Eric?
For 3 years.
No. No, but he's only from. But don't forget, it's an entire bureau. So I'm one borough out of 3 housing boroughs, and then you also have the bureau. And like I said, every lieutenant in the bureau had the money, and you would see that. I had other lieutenants that were being promised by the chief, "Oh, you're next, oh, you're next, oh, you're next," and then they weren't next. But Eric, what year did you get promoted?
It was end of COVID, 2020.
2020, right? So again, Eric, and I know that Eric was number 1 or number 2 on the bureau list, because I did have eyes on the bureau list, when I was there. But again, now you have to make sure that the person stays relevant. You have to, because now on paper, don't forget, Eric kind of had some things against him because he didn't have those charges yet, but he had all those open CCRBs. But I, again, was able to explain that, and having my reputation of not putting my name just behind anybody, I was able to explain. I looked at every one of those body-worn cameras, and I could talk to you about every one of those cases. And I'm telling you, to me, there wasn't anyone more deserving than Eric. And, I'll take partial credit because I know the chief also pushed for Eric also, to get promoted. But sometimes that's what it takes. But again, you have to have those strong personalities that are willing to go up to the upper echelon. A lot of people are afraid of the upper echelon. A lot of executives, Rob will tell you, even chiefs are afraid to talk to the higher chiefs. They're people. They're people that have come up through the ranks for the most part. And, you can't be afraid to have a conversation with them.
You know what's interesting, Ron? It took me almost a decade to actually get this promotion by special assignment. When I was an anti-crime sergeant, starting in 2012, I started getting put on this supposed grid that nobody ever sees. And I always said, what is this grid? It's like some secret squirrel society. I got promoted to lieutenant in January 2015, and I continued to be put on this list every year until finally I got promoted in 2020. And every time I was told, I said, oh, what happened? I see people get promoted to special assignments, not me. What happened? You know how it is. So what does that do? And Rob and Ron and John, you say that, I love you to answer on it also, because we're talking about executive perspective and our perspective. What does that do for the relationship of the commanding officer and the person that he's supporting on getting promoted, because they do an outstanding job in that precinct? Maybe they're keeping crime down, whatever their specialty is. What does that do for your relationship with that particular member of the service, and what does it do for your command?
Can I just say one thing though about
Absolutely.
we've had people that we didn't put on the grid that got promoted,
Yeah.
and the Harry Whedon would come to me and goes, who got this guy promoted? I said, Chief, I have no idea. How did this guy, this guy just pop over everybody, over our own grid that we weren't even conferred with. Like, he wasn't even hey, all of a sudden this name pops up on the list, and you're like, how the heck did this even happen?
Right. And then that guy says promotions walking around like a peacock.
Yeah, look what I got. And everybody
Well, listen, I know for a fact, because I know a lot of people, and I know a fact that a guy that would sit down with a certain chief and look at the grid, I was probably the third list. It was probably the main grid. Guy's daughter just got promoted to detective, by the way. And he would personally look down, and he wasn't really concerned with the years on the job. He wasn't really concerned with the tax number. He wasn't concerned with anything. He was concerned with the diversity, equity, inclusion standard. He was concerned if it said male white or male black. And then he was like, the guy I was talking to, he's like, I would personally watch. Oh, yep. He didn't even know these people. Didn't care.
So, and that's not just for grade. That's obviously for executive promotions also.
Exactly.
They
didn't even care about anything. But
to Eric's point, as a precinct commander, it is demoralizing. That you have to have the ability to have an open relationship and open conversations. And I always had an open door. There's people I see in the comments that have worked for me in the past that no, my door was always open. Anybody can come in and talk to me at any time. And Eric used to come upstairs and we'd shoot the shit and talk job stuff, non-job stuff, and you'd have to be able to say, listen, and they people have to have the confidence in you as the executive to know that you're not bullshitting them, Like, there are people out there that are just blowing smoke up your ass and telling you, hey, yeah, oh yeah, I'm pushing for you. And they've never said a word. And I've had, at the borough and bureau level, I've had people say, oh yeah, my CO put me in for special assignment. And I'm like, no, he didn't. You weren't on the list, and that guy is just blowing smoke, whereas you have to have that reputation. You have to have that ability and that relationship with your people to know that you're being honest. And if they know that you're truly fighting for them, they know how the job is. They know that these things are going to happen. But I honestly believe that if they feel that you're fighting for them and you're treating them right, in their position, that helps with morale. There's also another part to this that really doesn't have to do with the grid or promotions, is you can't be selfish with your personnel. When people are out there and they're busting their ass and they're doing God's work, as we call it, and they want to leave, you have to let them go. You have to encourage them to move on to bigger and better things. If I can't get you your detective shield as my anti-crime officer and you want to go to a squad, I'm going to do whatever I can to make phone calls to lose my talent at the command level to help you to progress your career. So that there's the other parts of it too. It's how you treat your people to try and keep that morale up, but also the other people in the command. We used to, like with the conditions unit, now the Q unit, the Q teams are coming back, right? But like Eric had said on a prior podcast last week, when the Q teams came back, the conditions team was the minor leagues for the anti-crime. So you always had people, I hate to use the expression that was used for the administration, but you always had to try and have a deep bench, because when people wanted to move on, whether they got promoted or they moved to a specialty unit, you wanted to have people that were groomed properly. So you had to have a good boss in the conditions team to groom the people properly so that they can move on to anti-crime. It used to be like when I was a cop, in the 90s, you wanted to get to anti-crime so you can get up to the squad, to the Bram. That was the pecking order. Doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately.
Ron, when we talk about this grid, this infamous grid, this secret squirrel society we've been hearing about for years, is there an actual spreadsheet? How is this monitored? Has anybody ever seen this grid, or is it just a piece of paper with the police commission have a couple of names on? Is this like an unwritten rule? Rob, have you ever seen this? What exactly is this secret squirrel society?
So we would get a list, and it would have, okay, so for specialist, second grade, first grade, and then also for sergeants, SSA, and for lieutenants, LSA, and then even there was an executive grid where you would get promotion from captain to DI and DI and so forth and so on. So normally, I think at the end it became where it was on a portal. Like you would type in the names, especially for the executive grid. You would type in the names, and then it would go downtown, and then you would kind of lose sight of it. But within the detectives and stuff, you would write down and type in the names, and then you would send it obviously to the overhead command. Now, when we became a bureau per se, right? So when we didn't report to the chief of patrol anymore, we reported directly to the chief of department. Then our grid went right to the chief of department. So all our names went down there. Now, I know those lists got, so the chief of department takes all his subunits, right? And now he shortens all those lists to what the numbers that they can provide. So they usually give us a number. Let's say they say 10, 10 detectives to second grade. We'll put those 10 numbers in, but that number gets shortened once it gets up to them, and then I'm sure that it even gets shortened even more once it gets up to the PC's office. So, you could say to somebody, "I put you on the grid," but if they're like number 10, they might not gonna get promoted, but they may, if nothing happens, they might move up the next year. If we do get 5 slots, they might move up, to number 5 then. So there is an actual format, and there is actual, names you put in. That's what we consider the grid. That's how those names get pushed up. Just to jump back before, you were talking about, like, you gotta get in front. If somebody on your grid doesn't get promoted, and you told them, hey, you're number 1 and you're next to get promoted, you gotta get in the forefront of that message and get out to them or him or her and say, listen, not this time, but we're still pushing for you. And we still believe in everything you do. Because if you don't do that, that completely diminishes their thought. It's like, oh my God, I'm never going to get promoted.
I'm gonna just push a little back on that one, because I don't agree that you should be telling the people where they sit on the lid. If you're going to tell them, listen, I'm submitting you, I'm submitting you, I would never tell them where they stood on the list, because, like I said, if I told Eric you're number 1, like I believe, Eric, we've had conversations. I don't know that I told you were number 1. I just told you that you were being submitted. I don't remember. But I was against telling people where they stood on the grid because of the reasoning. Because now, if I'm telling Eric, you're my number 1, and then somebody else in Housing Bronx, Queens gets promoted to LSA over Eric, he'd be like, Layson told me I was number 1. The guy's full of shit. Why'd the guy in PSA 9 get it? So I was always against telling people where they stood on the list. I tell them, listen, you're doing a great job. I'm submitting you for discretionary promotion, and I would leave it at that. And now, Patrick Donahue's making some great comments in here about, you talk about the super secret squirrel stuff, Eric. The PC's list, he's correct, has notations of sponsors of who made the phone call for this person that's getting promoted, who's making the phone call for that person that's getting promoted. It's like when the promotions are coming down and they know there's going to be a promotion in 2 weeks, they'll have an executive meeting, a high level meeting upstairs on the 14th floor. And it's like a draft. All right, you're going to get 5 names. You're going to get 4 names. I'm taking 6 names. And, if you don't have 5 names, maybe I'm going to lend you a name this time, and I'll trade it off for the next one. It's almost like, it literally is almost like a draft, and that's the reality of the promotion process, And whether it's DEI, and listen, I've personally been told by high level executives, it's not happening right now, Ron. This person, names. I've been told names. This person, this person, this person, and this person has to get promoted before you could be considered.
Yeah, because
they didn't look like Ron Layson.
You have to consider what now specifically, that the mayor was involved with a lot of the promotions, right?
100%.
And we were told that, and especially actually, I think for every rank, that they would review the list over in the mayor's office, and the cuts would be made over there. So, I
Yeah.
mean, at that point, it was like, well, really, why are we even submitting names? Why didn't he just tell us who to promote? So, yeah, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
why?
Administration
And-
is just it's gone completely
Right.
haywire with this administration. I mean, the prior administrations, the only person that the mayor actually got, to my knowledge, the only promotions that the mayor personally got involved with, if they didn't have a personal connection, with the person. But, as far as, policy wise, were the super chiefs, were the 3-star chiefs would have to actually interview with the mayor because it's a city
and defend, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a city appointment. But other than that, they left it to the police commissioner's discretion. But we see that the police commissioner under this administration is the mayor.
Right.
So,
Well, we can all agree on that, right?
got
We all
two
agree that Eric
questions.
Adams is definitely still in charge, and no doubt about it, running the police department. But with that being said, the nepotism is so egregious. We were all having hopes for Jessica Tisch being this white horse. And what we're seeing is that they're doubling down on this nepotism. And I think it, like you said before, Rob Lukash, I think it rips through the department. I think it really does deteriorate any morale. I think, commanding officers are really at the median. You have a lot of responsibility. It really comes the art of managing people above you and managing the people below you. But I think that really creates an environment where you now losing trust from your people, especially with the so-called grid. I mean, we got some funny comments here. Some people saying, I think it was TC, this grid is on the rooftop. It's on a helipad. Because honestly, no one takes this grid seriously. I'm going to tell you right now, John, I'd love you to answer on this also. But from everything I know about this grid or grids, no one takes it seriously. I spoke to other lieutenants and sergeants, and everyone thinks it's just this big joke. And they honestly think it's just hoopla, just to kind of keep people at bay.
Because that's
John,
exactly what it is.
Right?
That's
what are your
exactly
thoughts
what
on
it is. What it is. That's it. You just said what it is. That's exactly what there's three different lists.
I'm going
get on this list. Then your boss
with the 3 different lists, John.
His boss submits the list to his boss. His boss submits the list to his boss. And then the boss gets it and says, yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
This girl's been driving me. She's in the Ask for Cash program. He's not. And that's it. Like the list.
It's let me take I'm the chief of department, so let me take 2 off of special ops, let me take 2 off of the housing bureau, let me take this and that, and I'll give it to my people. That's what happens. It's like, oh no, it's my list, it's not their list,
So I got a
and
question.
The three lists, John, just to clarify, the 3 lists is because like Rob said, the chief of department, has his subunits, which is mostly the enforcement. The first deputy's list is the administrative portion of the jobs and all those subunits, and then the police commissioner is just the police commissioner's list.
I can circumvent all those lists by calling.
100%.
I could call the mayor and be like, "Yo, I want to get promoted. I've
100%.
effected my 10th arrest, which is 2 more than you've made. I deserve to be a first-grade detective or a deputy commissioner."
100%.
I'm circumventing all. So the list of total nonsense. Here's my question for you guys. I have 2 questions for you. Now all the bureaus get to submit, right?
Correct.
Have you seen it be consistent that even that is divided evenly? Like the housing bureau gets X amount of promotions, the detective bureau gets X amount of promotions, patrol gets X amount of. In your opinion, is that, from what you've seen, is that a special operations? Is that a fair? Is that being divvied out fairly, or is that just all arbitrary as well?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't being distributed fairly, and the super chiefs actually fought to get more people. And again, that becomes you have to have a strong boss. So if you have a puppet as a bureau chief, they're going to do whatever and say, okay, well, it is what it is. And then there's other people that are going to go in and they're going to fight and say, listen, I get PSB, Patrol Services is the largest bureau. They're going to get a larger amount of slots than the Housing Bureau or the Transit Bureau or SOD because of just the numbers. But what I did personally see is that when the bureau chiefs went and fought and said, we're not getting our fair share, I forget which administration it was honestly, in the last 10 years, how many administrations have we had? I lose track of which one it was, but under one of the administrations, they actually said, you're absolutely right. And you did start seeing it being doled out more. But that doesn't mean that once it gets to the bureau level and you get a slot, that the bureau chief is being fair in its distribution.
No, you have to take into consideration, whatever the budget is too, right? So they're going to look at the budget from City Hall and say, how many promotions can we do? And then they're going to drum it down the way they feel fit. So if you think that SOD is going to get a promotion every month, because even if they were getting one every month, you would think maybe that's fair. That's not going to happen either, because we were the first ones to be cut. And then we would go months on end with no promotion. And then until the chief would go and confront the PC, he would say, I got to talk to the PC after the meeting, after the PC briefing, because they would have briefings twice a week. He would go, I got to talk to him because we're not getting anything. And he would have to sit him down and say, hey, you're leaving us out. Come on, let's be fair. And then maybe then we would get one or two, and then it would again eventually diminish and fall off again, and it would take that push again. So yeah, it's
right. And
it's what they see and what they want, not what the guys deserve, in my opinion.
Again, you have to keep things relevant, and you have to put it in their mind. Otherwise, they're just thinking whatever they're thinking.
Right.
Like Rob says, his boss was a strong boss that wasn't afraid to go and sit down with the boss and say, listen, it's not fair. And he could have been told to go pound rocks or have the respect to take into consideration what they're saying. And fact being fact, Rob could speak to this, is that, the chief of SOD fighting as hard as the chief of SOD fought, they actually implemented somewhat of a policy of the ESU cops making detective. And then, you actually see ESU cops getting grade, which you never saw in the past, unless they were involved in some really, really high profile incident. Now, every ESU cop does get a detective shield eventually, deservingly so. But that only comes from not the DEA fighting, not the PBA fighting, because the PBA doesn't want to lose their members to the DEA, and the DEA is not going to fight for police officers because they're not their members. So again, it came from Rob's boss fighting.
I could tell you exactly where that came from, where it originated, because the fire department, anybody in their special operations command, SOC, were getting a differential pay. And they were getting close to 8 or whatever it was, whatever our amount of money, maybe 5,000. So if you were assigned from the fire department and you went from a regular engine or ladder company and you went in the SOC, you would get this extra differential. So then it was presented, I believe it was Kelly at the time, was saying, hey, our ESU guys are doing the similar work that FD does, other than obviously fighting fires, but pin jobs, rescues, collapses, but they're not getting the same money. So it came up to the point where they said, well, we can reward them by giving them detective shields. Now, which is fair, right? Because it kind of puts them on the same level. I mentioned it, and I mentioned it with Marlon, and I was standing next to a good man right there. That was a good man. I agree with Marlon that we spoke about it last time, was that I never thought they should have done that. They should have went with police officer special assignment. And there should be, there could be even, grades in that in itself. And then at least it's fair to the detective shield, and it's also fair to those cops that they actually get that extra money. And like I mentioned before, God forbid there's a line of duty death, that that promotion to that first grade can be a first grade specialist or whatever. And even with Marlon, I spoke about, corporal, all of those things I believe in, because they don't, and also that the fact that, at a certain amount of time, in a certain amount of rank, you should automatically get that. So similar to a captain, if a captain stays a captain for, I believe it's 5 years and retires, he gets DI pay. 10 years, he gets inspector's pay. 15 years, he retires at deputy chief's pay. So why isn't that done for the police officers who do 20 years? I mean, why can't that police officer for 20 years has been on patrol, busting his butt? Why can't he get, a detective first grade pay? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's just,
And in the
not fair.
90s, they did do the police officer specialist shield, the police officer special assignment, and the PBA did it. The PBA fought back
Right.
and took that away.
Yes.
They said that had to be arbitrated.
So listen, we're about to hit the 2-hour mark. We definitely don't want to go 3 hours, but I think one last question for everybody. Let's go around one more time and let's start to wrap this up. One last question. What, in your opinion, Eric, let's start with you. What, in your opinion, could be done to alleviate nepotism, both in the discretionary ranks and in transfers into investigative assignments and other assignments?
Well, there has to be checks and balances. It's a great point. And obviously, there's no checks and balances at this point where people could actually be promoted by rocket fuel. And I think the checks and balances would be that if there is this supposed grid, for one, there shouldn't be several grids. There should be one grid, and it should be transparent to the entire department. Just as we have in the department right now for our active retired members, NYPD, they know for any outside organizations or civilian members, we have what's called Post. It's a portal that you could actually apply to transfer to different units on the job. And I think that grid should be on that portal, and it should be transparent to the entire department. With all eyes on it, it makes it transparent, and it does alleviate the problem of these promotions by nepotism, because people could say, well, who was on this, someone that was promoted that wasn't on this list. And there absolutely has to be checks and balances with the commanding officer when these people are submitted. For one, the other check and balance is when someone is submitted, they should actually be aware of it, and they should know. And I agree with what you're saying, Ron. You don't want to tell people the number that they're on this list in case something happens, because they are getting, there's promotions by rocket fuel that is just completely overshadowing it. So I believe if they're actually a number that you're on that list and you're aware of it, that's another check and balances. And the promotions unit also should be involved in that checks and balances, because nepotism equates to corruption. These phone calls where people are promoted by rocket fuel that completely just, have this shadow over these promotions causes a huge problem. I mean, Rob, you spoke about it. Ron, you spoke about it. The relationship that it could destroy for the commanding officer with his personnel is damaging, especially for that command. This is something that should also be brought at ComStat. So I think the ultimate way to start from there is transparency. I think that grid should be exposed, should be public to the department on that portal, and everyone should be able to see it, and you should get assigned a number. That's why I'm curious with that also. If you guys, when you answer it, if you could actually reflect on that. When it comes down to discretionary promotions, is there a budget allotted for that promotion, or is it based on manpower? You're shaking your head. I assume there would be by budget. So how that budget is utilized should – I know you're shaking your head. That's something that should be transparent also to the department. Hey, this is so much money.
It is. It goes by a head count, Eric. It goes by a head count. That absolutely goes by a head count. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So, but listen, I think that's the bottom line to start. Would be transparency. Put it on that portal. It should not be this. Honestly, we say grid. There's some grid. I think it's a lot of hoopla. I think it's a magic show. I don't think there's an actual grid. I think that's what they tell you. I think there should be an actual grid that's on that portal that we could see. Rob, what are your thoughts?
I think there also should be that they give you a specific number so that that number that you grid, you're going to put those people on. They're going to promote. Don't give me a blown out grid so you can like pick and choose who you want on that list, but give me the list. I have 5 guys that are going to get promoted from 3rd grade to 2nd grade, and we'll give you the 5 names that we propose, and then we're pretty much assured now that, based on budgetary projections and everything else, that these 5 guys are going to get promoted. So it's not arbitrary. And you can also say that, all right, whatever the PC's office wants to take, if you want to take 20 names, I mean, you're the PC, right? Chief of department, that goes down. But give me my number. So then I have something to work with. And I don't arbitrarily say whether I give the guy the number or not. I could say, or her, you're on the list. But they never got promoted. So now they're like, I was on the list, and I was on the list, and then I'm on the list next year. Then I'm on the list the 3rd year. No, I have 5 guys or gals, and they're going to get promoted. They're on the list. And that's what I could tell them. You're on the grid to get promoted. And that's it. Don't leave it where it's, give me a list, and then, now I'm going to pick and choose who I want. And I'm going to use the PC, I got 6 drivers, so I need 5 list numbers from SOD, so because I got to promote these 5 people. So it's just not fair. It needs, like you said, it needs to be more open and guided so that you can give these people what they deserve.
Ron, what do you think, brother? What would you do?
What would I do, and what the reality? I'm a realist. It's never going to happen.
What would you do? You're the mayor. Well, how would you change it? What would you do?
No, I agree. I agree. I agree with Rob that there has to be some transparency. How could you do it? You're never going to be able to take away that discretion of the police commissioner. When they talked at one point about executive promotions, they tried and they came to an all-out where all executives had to be there at one day in the police academy, and they told us, we're trying to make it fairer. Like, they were honest with us. They said they're trying to make us fairer. And they put us in 3 tiers. And they told you, if you're in tier 1, you're going to get promoted. In tier 2, you're probably going to get promoted. In tier 3, it's you need more. Oh boy, you need more training. Or more. I forget the wording that they used, but then there was look at that head of hair. But then the first deputy commissioner stood there and told us, then there's the shit's going to happen where people are going to get promoted because you have the discretion of the police commissioner. There's always going to be that discretion of the police commissioner advantage. So what personally, because I know you're never going to take away the nepotism, you could, if you had the integrity at the top to completely you're never going to take it away, no matter what. So oh my God, the great gloves and everything. You could do the list. So take the grid. The grid is legit, Eric. And if it wasn't for the grid, you wouldn't have got promoted. Because then you would have been picked out of thin air by the upper echelon at their meeting. So the grid does play a part. You have to make the grid to have a chance. If you're general population in your 3-tiered, system, right? So if you're general population, then you have to be on the grid to give yourself the chance. So how could you leave room for the police commissioner's discretionary promotions and those that deserve it? You could put in less people on, say you're going to promote, 20 people are going to get a certain promotion. You're giving the grid 15 and take 5 for the police commissioner's discretions. But then how do you do that once again? If you're assigning numbers, and I don't know that there is numbers, because like I said, the Housing Bureau, the PSB, everybody assigns a priority list of who they submit. And then how that falls on the overall list, I don't know, because it doesn't go in that order. So, you have to have the list. I don't know what the answer is. It's a very difficult thing because you can't put something that's completely concrete in, because you have to have that buffer. But I think that the buffer, instead of the buffer being those, discretionary police commissioner discretionary promotions, has become the majority, not the minority. And
Right.
I think that's got to be flipped.
That's the big problem right there, Ron, is that that's fine. The PC always has ultimate discretion, right? Because that was even with the executive promotions. It's
Right.
up to the final say is with the PC. The problem is when the PC and the chief of department start taking all of them just for their own,
Right.
their own, giving out their own little, dishing out their own little rewards to everybody. And that's where it becomes problematic, is when they start, hey, stay with me or this, do this and do that, and I'm going to get you promoted here. And that's a big
Right.
problem.
And this administration
But like, here's the thing, like, no one, like, there has to be rigid rules. Screw the PC. Honestly, give him one promotion. You could get one promotion that you, and everyone's going to know this was the PC promotion. There has to be rules in place. And if there's not, it's 5 years to investigative assignment. Guess what? Oh, your whoever's kid, sorry, 5 years to
No,
get an
I
investigative
agree with that. I
You're
agree
right.
with that.
You're going to get promoted to deputy inspector X amount of years before we're even going to look at you as a captain to be promoted to deputy
Right.
inspector.
Well,
X
that used to
amount of
be.
years for you to get promoted from deputy inspector to inspector. It has to be rigid. And then, like Eric's saying, yeah, that everyone should get a chance, but that list, once you're on that list, it should be transparent. And the reason it should be transparent is because, like you said, Ron, you said, oh, Eric had to stay relevant. Why did Eric have to stay relevant in his career? That's bullshit.
Because there's a big list. Because
the list keeps changing.
Right,
The list
list
keeps changing.
Well,
and
the list changes once a year. The list officially the list changes once a year. You have to resubmit every year.
It shouldn't. You should get pulled off that list if you did something wrong. Other than that,
no, that's the truth. But if I remove somebody from the list, I have to do a 49 explaining why they were submitted last year and not submitted this year. That you have to prove, you have to give a reason why you're removing somebody from a prior submission. So if Eric was submitted in 2019, if he wasn't submitted in 20, I have to do a 49 explaining why he's not being submitted.
But
and it may be a disciplinary reason.
He shouldn't even have to be resubmitted at that point. You put him up there. He's on this list.
No, it has to be reevaluated. It has to be reevaluated because the performance may have changed.
Well, then if your performance changed, you get removed from that list. Your performance needs to constantly be evaluated, but that list doesn't need to change. And what you did for me today is not a cop's career. I look at
100% not.
Eric Adams is sitting up there talking about how he hates people in administrative positions when he was a coward his entire career, did absolutely nothing his entire career. Meanwhile, you do have some people in positions that are considered administrative positions that are 20-something years on the job, 700 collars, made detective first grade. Technically, they're administrative, right? But those people are not ever going to be considered on the grid because the job's always, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately? And that's the whole portion of, all right, you keep working really hard, Eric. You never go sick. You never go sick. You make those arrests. You lead the city in gun arrests. And one day, maybe we're going to get you up there. But my nephew, he has 2 years on the job. He's never made an arrest his entire career that a sergeant didn't give him. He lost a prisoner. He's had about 7 off-duty incidents. He's probably going to have another one soon because he's dating some scale. He keeps running the Finest Unfiltered's name in the computer, and he's getting promoted. And, we have to have standards, and there's not. And, there has to be transparency in it. When there's not, corruption. Look what we're watching. Because we laugh about the ask for cash. We're laughing about the ask for cash, but there was ask for promotion. There's plenty of ask for promotion, and there was plenty of pay for promotion. And that's what we're seeing.
Right.
Exactly.
And I said that. I said that these discretionaries have flipped and become the majority and not the minority. And it's not about what
nepotism equates to corruption. Ryan, nepotism equates to corruption.
I'm not
I want to say this. What was that? No, but I want to say this, right? When it comes to that conversation, I had a chuckle, right? I don't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to talk about this, but I'm laughing when you said that we're trying to figure out how to make this fairer. And what they're really telling you is that we're not going to make it completely fair because we have power and influence.
Right.
It's never going to be completely fair.
If there was one, or maybe let's say, all right, we'll even stretch this out and say, you know what? We'll give the police commission two promotions, right? It's the police. Now that's complete transparency because everyone knows the actual picks by the police commissioner. So the police commissioner would have to make sure they're actually responsible and accountable for those particular promotions. That's why I say, I know that we say there is this grid, that there's names on it, but really the grid doesn't exist. That's the reality. It doesn't. It's like the Matrix, right? It doesn't really exist because there's kind of a grid, but when we want to put someone in there, we put him in. And Rob, you said it best. Wow, who's this guy that got promoted?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah, we do that all the time.
They're not going to give up their power. Okay,
No.
that's the thing. That's their power. That's their little house. They're gonna hold that as long as they can do that. I can remember when executives would vote on other executives on who you
Yeah.
felt was the guy. It became like a popularity contest. Like, yeah, I had people calling me. I didn't even know who they were. Hey, can you vote for me? I'm like, wait, I don't where like you were on my job one time. I said, I don't even remember who you are, man. I'm not voting for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it has to be, like you said, transparent, and it can't be like arbitrarily. There should be some real way to get promoted, and the problem is they're never going to give that up, no matter what. Even if the only way would be if the mayor says to the PC, it says you only get 3 slots. This guy only gets, and I can still guarantee you that the PC will be saying, "Oh, I only get 3 slots." Chief of department, you give me 2 of your slots. You're putting these 2 guys in. So it's always going to be that, it's just, it's
And
not,
it can't. And as far as discretionary and the executive level, it can't be time based. It has to be, because you're going to have inept executives that have 5 years as a captain, and then you're going to make them a deputy inspector automatically.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I'm saying you're not eligible to even be considered.
Oh yeah, no, I
You're
agree with that.
Dominican, we're not going to take you from captain.
I
That-
agree
that-
there should be minimum standards at every level. Just
Yeah.
like you can't be sergeant unless you have 3 years as a cop. You can't be a lieutenant. Well, now it's
You can't be
now
sergeant
it's-
for 5 years.
5 years. 5 years.
You can't
Right,
take
right,
a
right.
test once you have
And then it used to be 3 years to lieutenant. Now I think they changed it to 2 years. And 2
Yeah, I think
years.
is it 2? Yeah.
I think it's 2 years now to lieutenant and 2 years to captain from lieutenant. I think they changed it.
It's
So you
5
could be a
years.
captain.
Yeah,
You could be a
sergeant,
captain
yeah,
with 9
lieutenant.
years on the job now.
Right, 9 years is if you time it right, you can make captain 9
Yeah.
years. 3 years
9
you can
years.
take the test of sergeant. 5 years you can get promoted. 2
Right,
more
it was
years
3 years
lieutenant.
take the test, 5 years
Right.
get promoted, and then 1 day in rank to take the test, and 2 years now instead of 3 years to
The
become
bottom line,
lieutenant.
I feel like we're in the Matrix. I feel like it's like, hey,
But
you
no,
want-
I agree with you. There should
you
be
want-
like,
yeah.
listen, you shouldn't be able to be a deputy inspector unless you've been a captain for a minimum of 2 or 3 years.
Right.
You have
Yeah,
to
that's what I'm
learn
saying.
the
You shouldn't
rank.
be considered. I'm not saying you're getting promoted.
Right, considered. Right, 100%. I agree.
I'm saying that
I agree with that 100%.
Because you whatever, we want to put a black female in charge of aviation or it's the most important thing that now we have a Chinese female ESU captain or deputy inspector. That, like, I don't think those are. I think for you to even be considered, you should have to have put your time in. And that's what I'm saying when it goes to investigative assignments, when it goes to anything. And then guess what? If it's the chief's kid that goes, at least they put the time in. You can't really say anything.
Yeah, no,
John,
I
you know
agree.
what the problem with that is, though, John? I think what happened a couple years ago is it's because everybody started retiring, and the diminished the whole amount of numbers in the NYPD. They didn't have applicants to even go anywhere, right? So then they started reaching down to guys with 3 years on a job, and hey, you want to go to this and that. So if you put that 5-year mark in there, if all of a sudden everybody starts retiring, you might have where there's guys aren't even eligible to backfill into the units, the detective bureaus and stuff. But yeah, I mean that's just one point. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly that there definitely should be a minimal of certain amount of time on whether it's patrol or whatever before you can even apply to some place and go into it, right? You got to know the job before you can be in a position where you're going to try to investigate things that you don't even know about, that you haven't even experienced, right?
Right.
So,
How is a kid a detective when they can't handle a patrol car?
right.
It doesn't even
Exactly.
make sense to me. There's no one's born a detective. Nobody's born an investigator. Nobody was born a great cop. I mean, I've seen guys that are great cops. I've seen guys get a lot better. They didn't come in and get great. And, like, to me, it's like you're skipping vital, crucial steps along the way. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And this is what we see under Eric Adams. It's a swamp of nepotism, corruption, and cronyism.
It happens at the executive level also, John.
Yeah.
We see
Right
junior
now.
captains. You see junior captains that weren't even executive officers of a precinct become precinct commanders. And then
Tariq Shepard, he was technically an XO, but he never was there. He was never there. And then he gets promoted. He's the CO of the 2A for 2 weeks. He gets promoted to deputy inspector. Then he gets promoted to 1-star chief. Then he gets promoted to Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. This is all within like 6-month period, by the way. Then he and then he gets promoted to Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, and now he's demoted, but he's still promoted. He's not demoted back to his position of 1-star. He's promoted
still
up to a
2-star.
2-star. So yeah, I mean, and here's a guy. He was never even an executive officer, never did a duty, never did any of the stuff. Yet he's going to sit there and tell a 30-year guy like you, who's done the duties, who's ran command, who's been in Excel, tell you what to do. We're missing integral steps here. It's not even like he did it for a 2 or 3 year window. And it's like, all right, he was fast tracked. He only did those 3 years. And then he got there. At least he kind of understands what you're going through and what you're dealing with. How are you supervising people? You have no idea what they do.
Yeah, they completely missed the learning curve, right? So if you're a duty captain, you know what you have to have before you call the duty inspector, who will probably tell you, oh, call the chief direct, because the duty inspectors never wanted to talk to the duty chief, right? But I'm sure Ron did, but and I did too when I was an inspector. But if you miss those steps and you go right to the chief, then okay, now when the duty captain calls you or the duty inspector, what questions are you going to ask them? What did you have no knowledge about what's going on, no knowledge what you should really ask them, what the important questions. Like I was a big advocate of, I want to suspend this guy, I want to modify this guy. And I would always say, okay, well, did we find out the mental state of this individual? Are we doing this modification or suspension, and is it going to have an adverse effect on that individual? Because take what they did, and is it really necessary at this time to modify or suspend? And realizing that modification is a little easier pill to swallow than it is suspension, right? You don't want to suspend somebody to lose their, all their benefits and everything else, their time, everything else. So you have to know what to ask and get the answer to the question. So if the person was never a duty captain or never a duty inspector, they don't know the procedure, so you could jump these people, 2 or 3 ranks, and then what? They have no knowledge. They have they're really just, I'm going to say it, they're idiots with stars on their shoulders. That's all it comes down to.
So what you're talking
Same
about
thing in
here,
the squad.
it's not
Same thing in the squad. You're
Exactly.
getting there, the kid doesn't even know what to do on the job, but yet he's investigating. It's like,
Right.
wait, do you even know what the steps were that the patrol officer should have took? How are you making sure what you should have known and not?
Right.
So not only does nepotism affect budget when we talk about the money that's being spent for people that shouldn't be promoted, but we're talking about how this affects public safety, right? And how it affects the department as far as leadership goes, because you see people when they move up by rocket fuel, they bypass things that they need to learn, because leadership is a skill for most people, right? There are some outliers, but leadership is a skill that you learn, and that affects public safety. I mean, for modifying people or not modifying people that shouldn't be because you don't have the tools, because you were promoted by nepotism. That's why nepotism is a major problem in the police department. It equates to corruption. It equates to being completely inadequate. It equates to ineffectiveness. I see on the chat here, TC is pretty expressive about discretionary promotions, how it is what it is. It sucks. It is discretionary.
More of the same. Just keep it the same. I'm just on here. I'm just going to hate my life. And
that's my point.
And we're never going to fix it. We're never going to advocate for it. All
Just
the mayors
let it go.
Duty booty. Yeah, we got it. We got it, TC.
Listen, discretion on the meaning on its own is that there's not complete rules applied, that there's flexibility, right? That's the definition of discretionary. I think it was TC was saying, look up the definition. We know what discretionary means. It means flexibility. I mean,
Right.
we can change the name. We can say it's an elective promotion, which would be the antonym of discretionary. But either way, it doesn't matter. There needs to be checks and balances. And your John was saying rigid in place. Yes, we need rules as far as how these discretionary promotions play out. How much time in rank do you have? And the other criteria that we may analyze that you fit that's suitable for that position. And as I said before, it's great. If you had 100 arrests in 2 years, fantastic. But that is one dimension. And you should be multidimensional when it comes to being a police officer, especially if you're going to be promoted. But these promotions by nepotism affect the entire department. And I think that's what we're saying before, as a commanding officer, when you're the median, you have to manage the people above you and the people below you. That creates a damage in the relationship. That could hurt a commanding officer. Honestly, that could deteriorate a whole precinct. I mean, if you have, let's say you have a lieutenant or a sergeant that's supposed to be promoted to special assignment, and he or she has all the men and women in that command behind them, and they don't get promoted, that could destroy an entire command. And I don't think I'm being over the top saying that. I think it could. I'm sure Rob and Ron, you might have had an experience like that, especially being commanding officers. How one incident, could blow your whole command. And what does that do for you? You're like, shit, I got to start over here. I built these relationships, and now I got to start over because the nepotism at the top is destroying what I'm trying to build here. And I'm sure it's probably happened to you.
Yeah, like I said, though, that's when your relationships come into play, and you have to make sure that people understand where you're coming from, and that you're doing the right thing. And there is going to always be that shit happens. It sucks, and I'm not defending it, but shit is always going to happen, and things aren't always going to be fair, and that it's a reality. I always speak the truth.
Before we wrap up, I just want to ask these questions. We're getting close here. We're 2 hours and 25 minutes. And TC says the answer is get rid of discretionary. So I just want to answer from all of us here. No. Ron, do you think we should get rid of discretionary or just put checks and balances in place?
No, you're never going to get rid of discretionaries. I don't think you should either. I think you should have the ability. You should have the ability. But it's got to be fair. Because discretionary too is, don't forget, you should have the ability to reward exceptional work. That's what I mean by discretionary. I don't mean nepotism. I don't mean, like I said, nobody in my offices ever got promoted throughout my entire career because I never put them first and pushed them first. I didn't believe they deserved it. They had other rewards. They had other perks of working for me, but that wasn't going to be one of them.
And Eric, I'll say, let the discretionary promotion be up to the person who has the discretion and understands that individual that they're going to promote. Okay. If you're putting your trust in me as an executive and I tell you, I think this person should be promoted, that doesn't mean you should be cutting that person up on the list because you're going to fill them with your people. All right. If you're going to give me the ability to do this, then let's see it through. Okay. Don't leave me to the water and not allow me to, complete the task. So,
all right, guys, listen, 2 hours and 26 minutes. Let's give final words. Ron, we'll start with you. We'll go over to you, Rob, and then Eric.
Yeah, listen, I just think that it's something that we're always going to be talking about. It's not something that's gonna be quote unquote fixed. Does it need to be fixed? It needs to be fixed. And again, it starts at the top. Like Rob said, if you're gonna give me, the discretion to submit somebody on merit based, let it have some weight or don't bother.
Yeah,
I'm the shortest answer you're ever going to get from me.
I totally agree. I mean, you have to, if you're gonna do it right. And right now, it's not being done right, and it needs to be fixed. And is there a quick fix? Well, I mean, the fix has to come down from the mayor to the PC, down from the top. And I don't necessarily.
You got to give the PC the discretion again. You got to give the PC the authority.
Yeah, right. And let the PC do. Let the PC set the tone, but the PC has to set the right tone too, right? Because they can't be put. If you put the wrong PC, and we've seen this where they start promoting people that that they're in their friend group, right? Not really people that are doing the work. So it just needs to filter down. It needs to filter down appropriately. I think there has to be some discretion, because this way the individuals can get rewarded. Because if you don't do it that way, people that don't have a hook are never ever going to get promoted. It's always going to be who I know. No, but you need to be able to reward the people that work. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen? You're not going to get anybody to do any work. And would I blame them? Absolutely not. All right, we all work for. We work for the promotion. We work for to move forward, to move ahead. And even a guy like I say on patrol, there has to be a reward for them. You don't work 20 years and tell me that guy doesn't deserve a reward too. So there has to be rewards across the board. That's what we do. Once we get into our position, that's what we look to attain. A little further. So I feel that discretionary and other rewards that are probably mandatory, right? That both should be part of that program.
And just to Rob's point real quick, to those in the know, like the acronym, if you know, you know, let's put the salute back into the promotion and get rid of the chest bump.
Right. Well, yeah. And the big faces and the whooping and all the hollering, which I think she did. But
Yeah.
I mean, that some of those promotion ceremonies were totally embarrassing. It could have been held up on 125th Street and Lexington Avenue, for crying out loud. That's how bad it was. So yeah, there's got to be some discipline in that too as well. Treat the promotees with the respect that they deserve. They've attained a promotion. So
they should have attained it.
Right, exactly.
You made a great point, right? It should be professional and fun at the same time, but it doesn't have to get to the point where it looks reckless and it looks idiotic. I agree with you. It takes away from it, especially when you have a heroes video going on. But I just want to say, listen, shout out to Ron Layson. Was my boss's boss. I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate you coming on the show today, giving your perspective. Rob Lukash, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I love your perspective. I love seeing the Florida sun in the background. Thank you so much hearing from you both. I appreciate this. This is a great subject. Really, I think this is kind of like the old guard and new guard. Well, maybe not new guard for me and you, Joe. Maybe this is the older guard and old guard. So don't get mad at me if I'm just. But listen, all kidding aside, I appreciate you guys coming on. I think we discovered a lot of issues that are going on, and I think ultimately, we can agree we need transparency, checks and balances. I don't think this idea of it going away is possible. It's necessary. Like you said, there's people you want to honor. So thank you so much for coming on today. I got a dog barking in the background. Thank you so much. We're 2.5 hours into it. It's a pleasure. We look forward to more of this.
Yeah, guys, thanks for listening. We had about 700 people with us the whole time. Thanks for the comments. Whatever we didn't get to, bring it up another time. We'll try to get to it. Appreciate you guys for coming on. Like I said, I just think there needs to be some type of standard. PC says all the promotions are merit-based, based upon what merit. If we give people clear examples of what needs to be done and make that transparent, I think that will help alleviate a lot of the tension around promotion and a lot of the anxiety that people who are looking to get promoted have. So that's just my final thoughts on that. And yeah, that's it. Tomorrow we'll have retired murder police on here, Lieutenant Tom Joyce. He's going to come on. Let's check out that interview. We're excited to have Tom on. And that's it. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you tomorrow. 0805.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.